Of course, that had to happen. These things happen. Perfect. So hello, everyone. How are you? This is Roadrunner, or otherwise Soti. I am working here at Intigriti as head of hackers, and we are very happy and honored to have this stream today for all of you. It's a stream that is full of hacking talks that I'm going to explain right now. And all these talks are leading to the one and only CTF that we have created with so much love and passion from the whole Intigriti team. We have created amazing challenges, we have amazing talks today, exclusive swag for the winners, and of course, amazing prizes for everyone that is leading up to the top 10 themes, but also for the best write-ups, etc. So again, because that part was not heard, thank you all of you for joining in this stream. It's not taken for granted. We appreciate your support, and we hope all of you are healthy and happy wherever you are. And you always have the hacking mindset at everything that you do, as everything can be hacked, and hacking is a lifestyle. So without further ado, I will read if we have any comments. Yes, I see that the voice and the no audio are the only comments. So I will jump to the topics of the day. So the CTF is starting in 21 hours exactly. We can drop the link in the chat where to sign up. It's a competition for beginners to experts. It's a Jeopardy lifestyle, Jeopardy type. The team size is up to 4 players. Of course, you can divide up to teams. And it will last for 36 hours from Friday till Saturday night or Sunday morning, wherever you are. Prizes, it's something that we are extremely proud of. So the prizes that are for the first place are including the first one, cash prize, Red Bull cans for the whole team from our amazing partner Red Bull, that we have also an amazing program. If anyone is now starting into bounties and to hacking, Red Bull has an amazing VDP program here at Intigriti. So we recommend all of you to start joining. If you want to know more differences of what is a VDP and what is a bug bounty program, later in the stream, we have a talk that will explain all these things about and how to become a successful bug bounty hacker. So limited edition swag designed with a lot of creativity by our design team. Swag vouchers to buy whatever you want from our swag store. Of course, let's defend a VIP subscription. And again, another partner of our platform, Grafana. If you don't know Grafana, you have to check it out. They are offering $50 swag pack to the top 3 teams. Again, they're running an amazing and very successful program that is specifically mostly for cloud in our platform. So make sure also to check it out. Of course, Hack the Box, thank you so much for supporting us. A yearly subscription to test your skills and to train on the platform. So in total is about 3K. The second place, again, cash prize, Red Bull cans, as we said, CTF limited edition swag, Intigriti vouchers, Grafana, and more things from Hack the Box. And third place, again, similar prizes, but of a little less value. And of course, we have actually prizes up to the 10th place. So all of you have a chance to win. We give swag cards, Grafana Labs, and of course, subscription from Hack the Box. And last but not least, something that we're extremely excited for. So after the CTF ends, we will have for the top best write-ups and the best video walkthrough, more additional prizes. So even if you don't win the CTF, but you create a very creative write up an amazing walkthrough or something, all of these are considering valid. So you don't have to win the CTF or to play the whole CTF. It's about your creativity into putting things into writing or into video, or I don't know, into a song. And now let's go to the next, which is the topic of the day. And I will go to that in order how to submit the best write-up and walkthrough competition. Everything is on our link that is also to join the competition, ctf.intigriti.io. There you can find all the information and actually to sign up and form teams. As I said, the CTF is starting tomorrow, 12 p.m. UTC time. CTF live event, this is the intro from Intigriti team. And we have how to hack OAuth secrets from Greg. Otherwise, Bug Bounty reports explained, you must know him already. Our own and amazing and so creative head of hackers. He is Chief Hacking Officer of Intigriti, Inti de Schukeler, if I said it correctly. Sorry, Inti. Social engineering meets AI. He has prepared an amazing talk that I think it will be very interesting for everyone. CryptoCat will be solving some beginner challenges from last year and some tips on how to solve challenges yourself. Alex Olsen, Alex, you must know him from the TCM Academy. He will be doing a crash course in prototype pollution. Of course, we have our very own also Yannick. He is leading product marketing here at Intigriti, but he has worked also as a triager and customer success. He was also a hacker, so yes, he does it all. And he will share a crash course and his tips on how to become a bug bounty hunter. And of course, the one and only Pixargonian, an amazing friend and ex-worker of Intigriti and a person that I really, really appreciate also in the industry. Again, a crash course on solving web challenges from past year CTF. And then, last but not least, we will have here at the stream, the one and only insider PhD, aka Katie, that will show everything about Recon to exploit and how that can help you to CTFs and bug bounty hunts. So I think that's pretty much it. I don't have something else to share. I don't know if we have any questions here at the chat. I will be very happy to reply, but I don't see anything. So perfect. Let's go then to the most amazing and interesting talk of the day. The next interesting talk, the first one of the most interesting, all of them are extremely amazing. Everything about OAuth secrets and how to hack them. We have one. How many days should it take to write a written write-up to win the prize? All information on how to enter your write-up for the competition, it is on ctf.intigriti.io. FYI, we give to everyone 1 week to write the write-ups and submit them. So after the CTF ends, you will still have access to create your POCs and everything. The scoreboard, of course, will be closed and locked, but you can leave it there. And I'm a beginner to cybersec field. Let's see. Perfect. Cool. Let's go to the first talk of the day and
Hello, welcome to my talk titled OAuth Secrets. Thanks to Intigriti for giving me the chance to speak at this event. In this talk, I will tell you a little bit about how to attack the OAuth protocol and get a lot of account takeovers, basically. My name is Grzegorz Niedziela, but probably if you know me by the nickname Greg Sunday. I was a pen tester. 3 years ago, I quit my job to focus on bug bounty and creating content. I'm the author of the Bug Bounty Reports Explained, social media channels, especially YouTube, the newsletter, Twitter, whichever is your social media of choice. Without further ado, let's dive deep into the technical details, but let's start easy. Let's start with basics. OAuth protocol is the thing that's most commonly used as the sign-in with Google, sign-in with Apple, sign-in with Facebook protocol. And let's see what happens when you actually click this button and authenticate through the authorization provider. First, usually there is some kind of request sent to your target. So on the previous screenshot, it was from Slack. So let's say our target is Slack, and the first request usually will look something like this, which just has a generic authenticate route or something like this. There are no parameters whatsoever. Then this request usually will redirect us to the authorization server. So if you clicked the sign in with Google button, probably Google will be somewhere as the parameter to this request. And then your target redirects you back to Google. So it will be this address down here. It has some parameters. I will not dive into each of these parameters now because that's pretty much what the whole presentation is about. What happens next is you go to Google or a different authorization server and you authenticate there. This process, what happens on that side of the process might take a longer time, but ultimately after you log in, you authenticate, you click the authenticate button. What happens is you will get redirected back to the target with these parameters. And the most important parameter, which we will come back to over and over again, is the code parameter. Because what happens later is this code is sent to the target, and the target replies with the session cookie, the session token, whatever authentication method the target uses. The bottom line is the code is being exchanged for the session. So basically you're now logged in as the user. And this is how it looks on the high level. So there will be 3 requests that we will always look at on the abstract level. The first and the third one are sent to your target. And then the middle one, the second one, happens on the authorization server. Of course, if you try the real flow, there might be more redirects, more parameters, analytics whatsoever. Probably the whole flow will be a bit longer. But in general, you can always simplify it to these 3 requests, and that's what I will do during this presentation. And first we'll take a look at the state parameter. So let's start the flow like this. We, as the attacker, we initiate the flow in our browser. We are redirected to the authorization server. We authenticate still as the attacker to the attacker's Google account or whatever. We get the code. Now, you know from the previous slide that if you open this URL, it will get exchanged for the code for the session. The code will be exchanged for the session, and then you're logged into the website. So now what will happen when instead of actually opening this link, the attacker will send this link to the victim? Now the victim will send this request to the target website, which will reply with the session, but this session will not belong to the victim. It will belong to the attacker because it was created in the attacker's browser. So this is OAuth CSRF, and this attack is quite common. It is probably the most common attack that's possible. It's the bigger problem is what is the risk of the attack? Because if you can log in as somebody, it's probably not higher than low, maybe a medium in some cases. But you have to think that OAuth does not only work for authenticating you where you're unauthenticated to the website. It's also the protocol that's used when you're already logged into your account and you add some integration. For example, you give the website access to your Google Calendar so that the website can add events to your Google Calendar. It's the same situation that happens. And imagine that instead of connecting, instead of being logged into your account, the victim connects their account with your Google Calendar. All of a sudden you see victims' events in your calendar. The events may be meetings, may have meeting passwords, confidential information. The same can happen with like Google Drive integrations or pretty much whatever. In this case, it is definitely not a low or a medium. The same happens when you can link the account once you're already logged in. So you logged into a website using your email and password, but then you have the option to also link your, let's say, Apple account, and then you can log into your account both with username and password and with your Apple account. If in this case, you can also have the OAuth CSRF, and you can link your Apple account to victim's normal account, then you can log into victim's account with your Apple. So in these cases, it's definitely a higher risk. So definitely think about these scenarios, because this attack is fairly common, to be honest. The bigger problem is, can you actually achieve the real impact, and not always whether it's possible or not. I would say maybe half of the implementations actually protect against CSRFs. So what happens to mitigate this? That's where the state parameter comes in. So during this first request, the website also sets the state in the browser of the user. It can be a cookie, it can be local storage, something like this. And then this state is being sent to the authorization server, but the authorization server does not verify it in any way. It just forwards the same state that it got. And then in the third step, when you're exchanging the code for the cookie, the state will also be forwarded in the URL, and then the browser will also automatically append the state from the cookie, or JavaScript will append the state from the local storage. So you will have two states, so the server will verify if these two are the same or not. So what it effectively means is the top request and the third request must happen in the same browser, which means the attack I've shown you before is no longer possible. Make sure that you do not stop testing for this if you just see the state, because state is a required parameter. Often the authorization server will throw an error if the state is not there, but very often the state will be there, but it will not be random. It will contain some information, it will have some static parameters, it even can have a redirect to which the victim will be redirected after the whole authentication process. In these cases, it is not used as a CSRF protection, so definitely keep testing if you see this. Now let's go to the redirect URI parameter, which is probably the one that is this is the most common attack. If you know one attack about OAuth, you know this one. So it works like this. Basically, the attacker sends this URL to the victim. You can see it is already sort of the request to the authorization server. So we skipped the first request of the flow, which isn't really a problem. Most attacks will look like this. And the thing is, the authorization server returns the user to the redirect URI parameter, which then contains the code, it contains the state. So if this works, this attack may not work as well as it did when OAuth was new. So you just send this first request, and then the victim is redirected to the attacker's server, and the code is in the URL. And the code, I will keep doing this for the whole presentation. The code generally means you can take over the account. It's not always the case, but for now, assume if you have the code, you can take over the account, because once you see the code here in the logs of your request, you send this request to exchange the code for the session, and you are logged in as the victim, so you have taken over their account. Now, this attack, this is not my first time doing this presentation. For example, I did it on the NahamoCon in, I believe in April this year, 2024. And in this moment, I used to say, probably you will not find an attack like this in 2024 because redirect URI should be verified by the authorization server. But the thing is, this year I saw literally a simple attack like this get a 5-digit payout, and it was just a matter of going really, really deep into places where other people didn't look. And this attack was possible because what you have to remember is OAuth does not only happen when you click the button sign in with Google and you go to Google and you come back to your target. It can also happen internally. So you can have target.com and then you can have authenticate.target.com, and you can log in with your username and password, and you are not even conscious that you're using OAuth, but under the hood, these two domains may communicate using OAuth, and while you will not find the redirect URI attack on Google or Facebook in 2024, if this is like the internal OAuth authorization server of your target, it will not be as well tested, and the impact may be exactly the same as with the external attack. So yeah, it's one of the bits I have changed for this presentation. So do not think that simple things will not work. But anyway, most commonly, you will need an open redirect for this attack to work. So you will not control the whole domain of the redirect URI. Probably in the best case scenario, well, in the best case scenario, you can control the domain, but in the more likely scenario, you will only control the path, maybe the parameters. So you will need an open redirect on the target to help you do this attack. And open redirects, I would say payloads from this slide cover 80% of all open redirects I've seen. This is the Pareto 2080 principle, if you know what this is. So the first payload is the simplest, starts with or index of, where the server just verifies if the whitelisted domain is somewhere in the URL. So you just append your own domain and you have the open redirect like this. Another one is the fake relative URL. So if the server checks, if the server wants to only allow relative redirects, so only the path and not the host, to make sure you stay on the same host on the app, they may verify that the redirect location starts with the slash, and they think it's enough, but it's not enough, because if there are two slashes, all of a sudden it's not a relative URL, it's an absolute URL. So this leads to a lot of open redirects as well. Then you have this trick with the backslash, because it has the origin in the difference between different URL parsing specifications. So there are two main ones. There is RFC based URL parsing and what web URL parsing. And the thing is, the RFC does not treat backslashes as forward slashes, while the other specification does, which means if you parse this URL with one specification, it will be different than if you parse it with another. So this payload also happens to work sometimes. I also saw this payload working. I do not know what is the reason for this to work, but it's also worth trying. Then we have the unescaped regex dot. So when the check is made with a regular expression and the dots are not escaped, then dots in a regular expression are wildcards. They can be any character, so you can just have a random character in the place of the dot. And also pass the validation. Of course, you have to buy the domain, but if you have an account takeover, you don't really care about the $10 for buying the domain. And then the last one that I see fairly often, maybe it's not the most common one, but I also see it regularly, is if the check is done with regular expressions, but the multi-line flag is turned on, then you can have the %0d, %0a characters, which stand for CRLF, or in a simple language for a new line, which means that you're also passing the regular expression, but you are redirected to attacker.com. So if you have this, you can put the payload for the open redirect in the redirect URI, and you can have the account takeover by using the open redirect. As I told you, remember to be more meticulous when you're checking the internal authorization servers. When you're attacking Gmail, you can assume they parse URLs correctly, but if there is like an internal OAuth happening, be more meticulous and test even the most simple things. The fix for this, of course, is to whitelist the redirect URI. So when configuring the protocol, the developer should just tell the authorization server what are the expected redirect URIs. But this is the piece that you can bypass if you can mess up with the parsing in some way. Then more commonly, you will only control the path. So instead of having the sort of open redirect payload directly in the redirect URI, you only control the path or the parameters. So you inject your payload into the path and parameters. So then you kind of add one more request to the whole flow, because once the victim is redirected from the authorization server, then the code and state are appended, but also there is your open redirect payload inside. So after the redirect, again, the attacker gets the code. Once the attacker has the code, they can exchange it for the session and take over the account. Importantly, this redirect here, it must preserve parameters, because the code and other parameters, but the code is the important one, will be present in the parameters. So your open redirect in this step, it must also redirect the victim to another host, preserving those parameters somehow, which unfortunately is sometimes problematic, because some open redirects will just redirect you anywhere, but will drop the URL query that was sent, or you just do not control the URL query. And then this attack will not work. Otherwise, it just adds one more request to the whole flow. And the attack can work like this. So we already have sort of 3 different attacks. We can, how to exploit login CSRFs. We know how to exploit the most simple redirect URI parsing validation. And we also know how to exploit how to chain the open redirect with the attack from the second step if our redirect contains or preserves parameters, should I say. Then there's the prompt parameter, and you may not be aware of this one because it is often not present in the URL by itself, but it is a standard parameter handled by most of the authorization servers. So the default value of the prompt, I think, is consent, which means that you have to click the button to authorize the website. Another value might be login, where the victim has to fill in their username and password. And there is also a value, I think, select account. So if you are authenticating with Google, you have a lot of accounts. So if you have select account, it will ask you to select the correct account. But for us, of course, when we want to perform this attack, we want the victim to have as little interaction as possible, because if you can trick the victim into clicking a button on GitHub when you send them the link, you probably don't even need the attack. You can just create your own app and have the victim click this link, and the victim will legitimately be redirected to your app. So then you can interact with the API in the context of the victim. So for our attacks, we do not want this. Of course, the attack is a bit more legitimate when the real domain is being shown in this place, but still, we would prefer the attack where the victim does not have to do anything. So if we add the prompt none parameter, very likely, if it's possible, the authorization server will just not ask the victim for anything. The victim will just send this URL and be redirected back automatically to the authorization server, which basically limits our interaction, increases the severity of our reports, and increases our bounties. So every single time you add prompt none to the exploit URL just to make the attack a bit quicker. With this, we do not really add a new attack to our possibilities, but we just speed up all the existing ones. Then we have the response mode parameter, which is also often not present because the default value of the response mode is query. So throughout the whole presentation up until now, we saw the code in the redirect URI present as the query parameter after the question mark. And this is what most websites use, but it is not the only value of this parameter. We can also have response mode equals fragment, and it's basically the same, just the parameters are present after the hashtag as the fragment of the URL and not as the query of the URL. And why is this important, and when is this useful? For example, in this attack by Franz Rosen, it was useful because the thing is, if in this case Reddit, if it uses the query normally, it only looks for the code inside the query, basically, which doesn't sound like a very smart thing to say, but it is useful because whenever you have the situation when you can have the victim go through the authentication flow and land on the target website with the code in the URL that's unused, it is a good lead which you may investigate. Why is that? Because the code is one-time use only, which means if you have the victim go through the authentication flow, all of your open redirects didn't work. So the victim comes back to Reddit.com in this case. The JavaScript or the server-side code will see that the code is present. It will exchange the code for the session. And even if you can leak this code, it has already been used, which means it is completely useless. So what you want to do is you want to somehow break this flow to have the victim land on some website where the unused code is present in the URL. And one method to achieve this is exactly by changing the response mode from query to fragment, because then the victim gets redirected to, in this case, the main page of Reddit. It was not only the callback URL was whitelisted, but also the main page of Reddit. It did not fit the screenshot, but the code is in the URL bar and it has been unused by the victim. Now, the second part of this attack is to leak the code somehow. You need either an XSS or you need some other different way to leak the URL. Am I saying this is easy? I am not. Actually, when this attack contains two parts, the first is breaking the OAuth flow so that the victim has unused code in the URL, and the second is leaking the URL. It's the second one that's actually harder and more problematic. I would say 8 out of 10 times you can lead the unused code to be present in the URL, and leaking it somehow is the more difficult part, but here it definitely worked. So we add a new attack to our repertoire. We can break the flow, and then if you have a method to leak the URL, we can also leak the code and take over the account. Let's also take take a look at the attack which we have done before, where we had the control over the path of the redirect URI and the parameters. Remember, we used the redirect, the open redirect here, and we needed this redirect to preserve parameters so that the code is not lost. The thing is, when the code will be in the fragment, which means after the hashtag sign, it will be preserved. Even if it's a server-side redirect, it will be preserved even if the redirect is cross-origin or cross-domain or cross-site. So here, the fragment, of course, is not sent to the server, so it's not visible here as well, but it still remains in the URL bar in the victim's browser. So then they are redirected to the attacker's website, and it's still reachable from the JavaScript code, so the attacker can get the code and the attacker can take over the account. So this way, we do not add a new attack to our potential ones, but we make the attack from step 3 easier because we do not need the open redirect to be parameter preserving. But these two values of the response mode are not the only two ones. There's also response mode equals form post, which from the user's perspective, it doesn't change much from the browser. It still looks like a redirect, but this one is not a redirect. But the response from the authorization server contains it's a normal 200 OK response with the HTML, and there's a form that leads to the callback URL. So the redirect URI is then the action of the form, and the code is one of the fields. And this form, it's usually auto-submitted, so there's no additional interaction from the victim or something like this, nothing like this. The difference from our perspective is that the code is not sent in the URL query. The code is not sent as the fragment. The code is sent as the post body. Now the question is, in what scenario are we more likely to leak the body of the post request than a query or fragment of the URL? The answer is probably there are very, very few or very, very specific scenarios where you can actually leak the body of this post request. But I have used this response mode once where I had the XSS on the authorization server. It was not Google or Facebook, but it was just the internal one of my target. So to show the impact of this, I wanted to take over the account. So I created the code like this, which kind of initiates the OAuth flow, and then after this gets sent from the victim browser, the victim is redirected to the callback URI, and the code is in the redirect location. So it's in the location header. So I wrote a code like this, which should allow me to get this location header, because this is fetched, the redirect is not actually followed, because I don't want the victim to actually follow the redirect, because my XSS is on the authorization server. So I wanted to fetch this header, but you cannot do this. You do not have access to this header, even if this is a same site and same origin fetch call. So I tried different methods, and the one that eventually worked was changing the response mode to form post, because then the code was not in the location header of the redirect, but it was in the HTML form of the response body. So you definitely have the access to the response body of the same origin fetch call. So then I just parsed the response and I extracted the code, and this way I could send it to my server and continue the attack normally. So this is not really a new attack, but it definitely helped me to exploit the very specific XSS on the authorization server. Another mode that's possible is web message, and it becomes more and more popular. And the way this one works is the response contains from the authorization server contains some HTML or code that has JavaScript that basically sends the post message to the opener, and usually this I have not seen an implementation of this which would allow me to just send the post message to my server. Instinctively, I would think this is a very likely attack, but I have not seen it work anywhere. It might be because this is a newer version, and maybe it was implemented once everyone was more familiar with the risks of this protocol. Because when you have the post message call like this, you will have the code and perhaps other parameters as the body of the post message, as the data of the post message. And then the second parameter here is the redirect URI to which you send the request. So if you open this as the attacker.com, this post message will not be sent to your server. One thing to note is that the second parameter of the post message call, it is being cast to an origin, and origin is only has the protocol, the domain, and the port, which means it does not have the path. The path may be visible here in the JavaScript code, but it will not be treated by the browser as anything. It will be ignored by the browser, which means if you have a very specific bug that leaks post messages on any website on the same origin, you can probably exploit it by doing a window open like this, and the web message should contain the OAuth code, which should allow you to take over the account. Also, another thing to note is that some websites want to use post message a lot, and it's okay when the authorization server actually supports it, but some of them do not, because if you have like login with Google, Facebook, and some other websites, not all of them support web message at all. So developers, what they do, instead of having different flows with different providers, they sort of build bridges. So you will have the target website open a new website which initiates this flow that works normally with the code or with the token in the query or in the fragment. Then it comes back to this like intermediary page, which gets this code and sends the post message back to the original tab where the user wants to log in. So unnecessarily you're trying to force the web message when the authorization server does not support it, and it definitely, I've seen bugs here, so be on the lookout for these. And the real fun starts where you start to chain all the different things together and multiple attacks from this presentation together. So I had the case where I had the open redirect, and I wanted to perform this attack, which we've already talked about, where I changed the response mode to fragment so that the parameters are preserved through the redirect, and I could control the path and parameters of the redirect URI. And I also had the open redirect in the target website. But the problem was that the open redirect only happened after successful authentication. So if the victim would go through the successful authentication flow, there would be the open redirect, but because the code was already used, it was absolutely useless to me. On the other hand, if they didn't go through the successful authentication flow, there was no redirect, so there was no attack as well. So what I did was I also had the login CSRF in this flow. So inside the redirect URI, I embedded attacker's code. So I generated the code first as the attacker. Of course, I automated it with the script. So this was a valid unused code to log into my account. And then in the state parameter, I could smuggle the open redirect payload. It wasn't as simple as this one, but I don't want to make this slide even bigger than it already is. And then I also changed the response mode to fragment. So what happened was the victim was being redirected to the redirect URI, and there were two codes in this location. There was my code, which I embedded one step earlier, and there was another code, the victim's code, but this one was in the fragment because I changed the response mode. And because the target normally used the URL query, it would look at this code from the query, not from the fragment, and it would see, yeah, this code is valid. So the victim would get logged in to my account. So now there was both the successful authentication flow and the unused victim's code was still present in the URL. So after even though this is not visible here, because fragments are not sent to the server, it was still present in the browser after the hashtag. So after the victim got redirected to my server, my JavaScript code would fetch the victim's code, and then I could exchange the code for the session and I could take over the account. So this was a very, very fun and complex chain. And I will also give you some more practical tips on how to find these bugs. There's one parameter which it's hard to link it directly to an attack, but it's very useful. So response type, 95% of flows, and throughout this whole presentation, I was speaking about the code, and that when you can leak the code from the victim, you can take over their account. And now, after all this time, I'm going to tell you the code is absolutely useless. The code is absolutely useless until you can exchange it for the session token, because the code by itself, you cannot put it in the authorization header and get the victim's data. You have to send this next request for this to work, and then you're probably being authenticated to the website. And the problem is, it does not always work. Sometimes what happens is there might be some additional validation on this step when the target communicates on the backend with the authorization server. They might also check some, if you messed up the redirect URI or something like this. And it was hugely frustrating the first time I had this situation, because when I can get to this point where I can leak the code to attacker's server, I'm 95% sure that the whole attack will work. And I don't know what do you do when you have an attack that you're almost sure works, because the first thing that I do is I check the bounty table of the target. And the second thing that I do is I open the submit report page, and I don't even start writing the report. I just want to have this page opened, and then I start to prepare the proof of concept to record the demo, make sure it actually works and stuff like this. And in this situation, it didn't work. I was so happy because I thought I have the attack, but it turned out there was additional validation here. And even though I could leak the code, I could not actually exchange it for anything. So it was completely useless. Another scenario where you may have problems with this is where you don't even have access to this endpoint, to the callback endpoint. This can happen when you're working with integrations and not really with logging in. For example, when you have WordPress and you want to, let's say, add your Google Analytics account to your WordPress, or add your Google Drive account to your WordPress. You are logging into WordPress as the admin, as you normally do. And then from one of the page on the backend, you add your Google account. And I had the case where this flow of adding the Google account, there was a bug there, so I could leak the code to me, but I couldn't exchange the code for anything useful, because to reach this callback endpoint, I had to already be logged in as the WordPress admin. And if I am the WordPress admin, I don't need any kind of attack to do this. So that's where you may need to change the response type from code to another value. One of the other values is token. And what happens then is, literally in the response, you have the access token, which allows you to communicate directly with the API. If you're familiar with this prefix, this is the beginning of the Google API access token. So if you change the response type on any of the Google flows, Google OAuth flows, you will see this access token in the response, which allows you to communicate directly with Google API. You can also have something called ID token, which is a JWT, which I actually don't know in what case it's used, but it's there. And you can also have all three at the same time in the request. So you should have all three values in the response. So these three values are in the standard, are the only possible values that can be here, but there can be multiple combinations of these three. So you can try each one of these by a single one at a time. Then you can combine groups of two. Then you can send all three and see which works and which doesn't. And then if you can link this, you can just talk directly to the API of the authorization server. And there is a very good reason why you should always, when you have the regular attack where you can take over the account by leaking the code, you should always also try when changing the response type from code to token. And the reason is this. I assume most of you are familiar with this, the CVSS calculator, because the regular CVSS for the typical OAuth account takeover, I would report it as this: attack vector network, attack complexity low. It in some specific cases might be high, but normally it's low. No privileges required. We need the user interaction, scope unchanged, then confidentiality, integrity at high, because you can take over the account and do anything as the victim, and availability none. So it gives us 8.1 high, which is not bad, which is definitely nice, but let's see if we can make it a critical, because it's a good starting point, but sometimes you will have attack complexity at high. If you need something else, then you're going back to a medium. And you know how big a difference can be between a high and a critical. So at the left-hand side, the first three metrics are already can't be better than they are. The user interaction for the typical client-side OAuth account takeover, about which the whole presentation is today, we cannot make this none. So the left-hand side pretty much has to stay as it is. On the right-hand side, confidentiality and integrity are already maxed out. Availability none, maybe on some specific websites where you have some admin access and you can maybe shut down the whole website. Maybe you can get it to high, but normally for 99% cases it will be none. And here's the last metric, the scope unchanged. It is unchanged because the only thing we normally do is take over the account to the website we are attacking. So the impacted component and the vulnerable component are the same. But if you can make this attack so that you can leak the token that allows you to directly communicate with, let's say, Google API, it is scope changed. Because all of a sudden, apart from taking over victim's account to target.com, you can also talk with Google API. Maybe you can read all your emails. Maybe you can read all your Google Drive files. Maybe you can read all your calendar events and maybe even add them. It basically depends on what the application, what permissions does application asks for in the scope parameter when doing the flow normally. All of these things you can do through the API. If you can change the response type from code to token and talk with the API directly, and changing the scope from unchanged to changed bumps us from 8.1 high to 9.3 critical. And if you know bug bounty tables, you know the difference between these two payouts can be absolutely huge. So you should always try with response type equals token. And for the end, some practical tips about where to actually look for these bugs. First of all, be persistent, because I've seen cases multiple times where you go through different providers and they work very differently. If you go through Google and Facebook and you see, oh no, it looks secure, there's nothing real to look for here, and then you look at Apple and all of a sudden it's vulnerable as well. So definitely check all of them and make sure that you not only check these that are visible, because for different regions there might be different providers. So even this case, I had this week I had the case where I was testing the OAuth flow and I saw in the JavaScript there are more providers than I actually see on my website. So I asked ChatGPT, where is this particular service used, in which part of the world? And it gave me the name of an Asian country. So I changed my region to that country, and all of a sudden I saw a new button of login with this website, and I had the bug there as well. So it exposes you to some attack surface that other hunters just didn't see, and you don't have to click through all the available regions. Usually all you have to do is to take a look at the JavaScript and see what's available there, and go even further, see wayback URLs. Maybe there you will find more endpoints that do OAuth. Maybe you will find more clients. Maybe you will basically find something that will be useful, and test for this. One more tip is to also take a look at the desktop app flows and the mobile app flows, because especially the desktop app flows, because with desktop apps, it's also, there's a boundary of some permissions, because when the user downloads an app, they log into their account, and the app, let's say, asks you for the permission to your photos, permission to access your microphone, your camera, whatever. I'm talking now both about mobile and desktop apps. And the sort of, when you click this button to accept these permissions, you sort of assume you're logged into your own account. But then if there is a login CSRF, maybe somehow you can exploit this trust boundary, and imagine a situation where when you have Google Photos app on your phone, it automatically synchronizes all the photos from the phone gallery to the Google Drive or Google Photos gallery. So if you have an OAuth CSRF in this functionality and you can have the victim log into your account, then all of a sudden the boundary which the user thought is there when they accepted the access to the gallery, it's no longer there. And all of a sudden victims' photos are being synchronized with attacker's account. So these things can happen with different permissions and different scenarios. Just make sure to not be constrained by only looking at the web bugs, because there are not so many things like this that can be exploitable. But this surface is definitely fun, and you can do some out of the box attacks. That's it from things that I have prepared for you. I hope that you have learned something during this talk, and I wish you a lot of account takeover bugs, because they are fun and they are paid well. You can access the slides using the link that's here. There's also the survey. I will appreciate if you take a look at the survey and let me know your feedback, let me know what you thought. And if you want to connect with me, go to bbary.dev, and there are links to all my social media channels.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I think it was an extremely interesting talk. All of them will stay in our channel for you to check them out. But of course, as Greg said, you can go and check the slides as well and everything. However, I will not take more of your time, because I know everyone is extremely excited for what is coming up. Our very own, and thank you for correcting me, Intigriti is now going to do an amazing talk about the trend that is out there, AI and social engineering. And also, to add, but I'm sure he has an intro about himself. If you don't know Inti, Inti, or known as Secure Inti on Twitter. He is Chief Hacking Officer here at Intigriti, a hacker for his whole life, part of any kind of platform for bug bounty hunting and reporting, strongly advocate of ethical hacking and hacking tricks. We will leave his links also below to follow him. And yeah, without any further delay, let's go to Inti's talk about AI and hacking.
Hello everybody and welcome to my talk. You do not...
Hello everyone, that was the amazing and insightful talk by Inti about AI hacking. And yes, he revealed it. We are going to have more AI focused programs on our platform. And also we have an amazing video series in our YouTube channel that you are watching us all here. The next speaker that is coming up, the favorite hacking cat of everyone, CryptoCat, has mindfully crafted an amazing series about LLM hacking. So you can watch the whole series here at our YouTube channel, and that he's following and explaining the Porttrigger Labs. But before that, you can watch his next video that he will be showcasing some last year's CTF challenges and actually giving tips for all beginners on how to hack. So if anyone is a beginner and wants some tips and tricks for tomorrow's CTF, make sure to listen to the following talk. So the mic on CryptoCat.
I'm CryptoCat, and we're going to have a look at some of the challenges from last year's Leads Up Live CTF. These are all beginner-friendly challenges. 3 of them were in the warm-up category, and 1 was in the crypto category. So if you want to have a look at some more advanced challenges, there are some videos on my channel and also on Intigriti's channel from last year. Anyway, this is the first one. I'm in CyberChef at the moment, which is a tool made by the GCHQ, which has loads of different encoding and decoding functionality in it. And this was a challenge. You literally just got this text, and if you don't know what kind of decoding this could be, maybe by the characters that are being used or the structure of it or the capitalization, things like that, then there is a nice function in CyberChef called Magic, which will try a lot of different types of decoding and see what the output looks like and whether it makes sense. And in doing this, you can see I've got quite a few. These are recipes. So if I click on any of these, it will give us the recipe. And then you can see this looks a bit like Morse code. This looks like URL encoding. So if you haven't really seen these types of encoding, you might not spot it, and this will be able to help you. And let me click on one of them. I think it's actually, this has probably got the furthest because it has Morse code, but let's just say we got to this one instead. So this recipe is doing a base 64 decode and then a base 32 decode. And this looks like it is now URL encoded. So I can just search here for URL, go to decode and add that to the recipe, and now it's decoded. And then I mentioned as well, this looks a bit like Morse code. So if you don't know that, then next time you see it, you'll know. This looks like hex because it's all 0 to 9 and then A to F. So again, we could just do magic, or we could do that from hex. There we go. And again, this looks like base 64 because we've got those 2 equals at the end. And then the only special characters in here are the slash and the equals. So let's try that, base 64. And there we go, we get the flag. On to the second challenge. This one was called Over the Wire 1, and it was a PCAP file, which you can see I've opened up in Wireshark. And some things that you can do in here if you're not used to doing forensics challenges or challenges which have packet captures, you can have a look at the file properties to get some ideas about the statistics. So how long was the packet capture run for? How many packets did it capture? What are the sizes and things like that? Just to get a general overview. You can also have a look at the protocol hierarchy. So this is very important because you might want to find out, well, we do want to find out what interesting protocols are being used. For example, FTP, maybe there's something HTTP. Not likely we're going to be interested in HTTPS unless we are able to extract the certificates in order to decrypt it. So if we want to look into one of these, let's say FTP, we can go apply as filter, and now it will only show us this FTP traffic. And if we see something specific we like here's something saying flag.zip, so let me follow that TCP stream. And that basically puts all those together so that we can just have a look at this in text format if it's a plain text connection. We can see then the flag.zip was transferred over, and there was also a reminder.txt that was transferred and a readme. So what we might do here, let's go, Well, let's get the flag first of all. Here was the request for the flag. So I am going to apply that. No, we're already in a filter, so I've got that selected. I'm going to exit that filter, and here it was. So this is where the transfer is actually starting. So I'm going to right-click that, and I'll follow the TCP stream. Oh no, that was the wrong thing. Let me close that again. So we don't want that. We want the where it actually starts the data. Here we go. So right-click this one, follow TCP stream. Now we have the data. If you know file signatures, you might recognize this as being the zip file signature, PK, and we can save this. So I'm going to save this as raw, and then let's go to save as. I will save this to the desktop. I'll save it here, and it is flag.zip. There we go, saved. And now if we try to unzip it, it's asking us for a password. So let's go back to Wireshark. And let us exit that. Let's go back, and I think we did see something in FTP again. So I'm going to filter that at the top. Yeah, right at the beginning, see we have this password which is mentioned. So I'm going to go in here and take a copy of this as text. Although I think that's going to take the hex as well. Let me just follow it. I'll follow this. I'll copy the password. And then we can try that again, unzip, and it says it's an incorrect password. So again, we'll go back. Remember, there was some other files in here. We had this reminder.txt. So I'm going to exit this TCP stream because we don't want the request to get the reminder. We want the actual raw data, which is here. So I'm going to follow that. That's the wrong one again. TCP stream. Okay, and it says the flag is really important, so I had to encrypt it in case it falls into the wrong hands. You already know the FTP password. Just use the same here, but update it accordingly. And I think quite a lot of people got stuck here, actually. Really, what you had to do was just to update the password for the year. So this was 2022, but the CTF was in 2023. So if you update it, that's it. You will get the correct flag. Okay, next up, we have Over the Wire Part 2, which was, as you would guess, Part 2 of this challenge. And I'm going to do the same thing. Let's go into the protocol hierarchy. You can also go into conversations up here, can sometimes be interesting, particularly if you've got a very big packet capture and you need to really just focus on particular IP addresses or MAC addresses, then that might be useful. I did also put some benign traffic in here, so you can see there's a request to Google. I think we loaded the Intigriti website and things as well, just to try and mix up the traffic a little bit. Might have had some other protocols running in the background because we don't just want you to instantly find the flag in here. So yeah, let's go to the protocol hierarchy again. This one has HTTP, which might be interesting, and we could filter by that, but I don't think it was interesting actually. We also have SMTP, so I will filter by that because here we go, we've got some mails, and you can see this one is going to CryptoCat. I can do the follow again. I always go to apply as filter, but it's been a long time since okay, I'm not actually going to read all that out, but basically we need to find a new secure method of transferring our files, and SMTP isn't secure because, as you can see, this is all in plain text, and we need to protect our files. Let's see. Let's go out of that stream. Let me go to SMTP and we'll just scroll through it again. You can see some data was sent over here, so let me actually follow that. Hi CryptoCat, I want to buy a cat. I know you already have some nice cats. What do you think about this cat? Let me know if possible. And then you can see that this was sent over in base64 format. I'm going to open up VS Code and I'll just do new.base64. I'm going to paste this in here and get rid of all the non-base64 stuff. There we go. And then I'm going to base64 decode it. So base64-d, and we're going to send it out to new. I want to check what type of file it is. It's a JPEG, so I'm going to move that to, I don't know, pic.jpg. Let's try and open it up. There we go, it's displayed. I don't know how to zoom out on ImageMagick. I guess you have to use this menu option or something. But yeah, we've got this picture of a cat anyway. Maybe we would try some things like Foremost, which you can use to see if there's anything embedded inside of this. You can also do that with Binwarp, but there isn't. It's just got the JPEG, so can remove that. We can also check the strings maybe, or the EXIF data, so that's like the metadata that's associated with the image. And if we check the EXIF data, there is a comment in here saying something like this, question mark, but that's all that we'll find in that image. So let's go back again, SMTP. So was that sent? There was also another message here. Let me follow the TCP stream. This one says, I love all kind of cats, but I prefer this cat. And then we have another base64 encoded message. So I'm going to repeat the same thing, just get rid of the non-base64 data. And we'll go and see what the file type is. Okay, let me close all this. Let's just repeat the exact same thing. So there we go. The file type is new, or the file type of new is PNG. I'm going to move new to pic.png. We could check again, exif tool, pic.png, and there are no comments in this one. We could also do foremost and bin walk and things like that, check the strings, but we won't find anything. Actually, in this case, steganography has been used, so you can use tools like steghide and jsteg. There's also one called zsteg, which deals with PNG images, and if I give it the pic, I need to give it the full name. Yeah, there we go. So basically there's an LSB steganography attack or a technique being used here, which basically just embeds data in the least significant bit of each pixel. So if you've got a color image, you've got 3 channels, RGB, or you've got RGB and alpha, 4 channels, and you can basically modify the last bit of each of those pixels or each of those color channels to put a bit of data in there. And the most you're going to affect the color by is one value, right? So if you've got a color and it's like, the color range is up to 255. So if you've got a color and it's 254, all you're doing is changing it from 254 to 255 or down 1. It's basically not going to have any visual impact on the image. But if somebody knows that there's something embedded in that area, they can then just loop through all the pixels, grab the last bit, and then concatenate it and convert it into text in this case. But it could very easily be another image or a video file or a document or anything that you can represent as binary data. So the final challenge we're going to look at is called Keyless, and it's an easy crypto challenge from last year. And the players were given this script, and you can see that it's got a redacted flag. So you need to basically reverse this encrypt function. So you can just make a corresponding decrypt function. And how would you go about doing that? Well, you want to reverse it. It's got to go backwards. So we'll start off by doing this part, which was XORing with 2.3. So we'll XOR the encrypted message with 2.3. Then we're going to go back to this stage, which we need to subtract 7. Then we need to divide it by 3. And let me just actually open up the solve script so we can see this as well. So yeah, we're first XORing it. Next, we are going to add 7. I think I might just set subtract 7. We're going to add 7, then we're going to divide it by 3. And then we have the B part. So yeah, instead of adding 5, we're going to subtract 5, and then we're going to XOR with 42. And then instead of adding 10, we're going to subtract 10, and then we're going to divide by 2. And there we go. That's exactly how we do it. We put it all together, and that will give us the flag at the end. Anyway, while I've still got your attention, let me just plug our monthly challenges. Intigriti runs a monthly challenge almost every month, and we add write-ups to our Gitbook at the end. So if you, as a community member, make some write-ups, we'll link them here. We'll give out prizes for the best ones and stuff like that. So make sure to check this out if you want to learn about web security all year round, not just when it comes to the annual CTF. And if you've got any interesting challenges, if you found any cool bugs recently and you want to showcase them in a challenge, then you can give me a shout on Discord. Anyway, that is it. I hope you enjoyed the CTF, and please, if you're solving a web or a phone challenge or something that comes with a downloadable file or the source code, please solve it locally first, just to keep our infrastructure running as smoothly as possible.
That was amazing and fast. I think one of the next challenges would be how many CTF challenges CryptoCat can solve in under 10 minutes. All the information for the challenges that CryptoCat has now shared in his video are available on our Gitbook. Oh my God, I cannot speak. Are available on our Gitbook at bugology.intigriti.io, where we have the list of our monthly challenges and videos and write-ups about them. So the whole collection can be found there. And without any further ado, the next talk is going to be about prototype pollution, a crash course about prototype pollution with the one and only Alex Olsen. You must know him from his courses for TCM Academy. And if you're interested, please join. And as said in the chat, but also we'll say it again in the stream, all of the talks will be available afterwards on our YouTube channel, and any slides that we have with us will be also linked. And if you have any more questions, please drop them in the chat and we will pick them up later, or the team that is monitoring it. So let's go for prototype pollution crash course.
To this talk on prototype pollution, a somewhat tricky to exploit and often overlooked issue, but worth understanding due to the extensive use of JavaScript on both the front end and the back end of modern applications. Today we'll do a quick intro into what prototype pollution is, and then we'll have a look at some theory so that we understand what's happening when we actually exploit this vulnerability, and then we'll finish with a quick walkthrough of a lab and demonstration. Now, we can find prototype pollution in both the front end and the back end, and when we're looking in the front end, we're usually using it to trigger cross-site scripting, and I think the most common place to find this is in applications that are using out-of-date jQuery, which is more common than you'd think, but there are, of course, other vulnerable libraries and ways to write dangerous code that merges objects in an unsafe manner as well. But the demo that we're going to look at today is going to be server-side prototype pollution. So we will focus on attacking the backend, and then we'll also briefly discuss some tools that will help us find and exploit prototype pollution as well. So things that will make our life easier. So let's do a quick introduction of what prototype pollution is, and then we'll jump straight into the theory, and then we'll do our lab. So for this talk, I just have one single slide, and that is to kind of give you an overview of what prototype pollution is. And it's a vulnerability or bug that affects JavaScript applications, and it allows us to manipulate the prototype of JavaScript objects. And this can lead to unexpected behavior across an entire application. So in JavaScript, objects inherit from the object prototype, which means that any properties or methods added to this prototype will be accessible from all objects within the application. And when we are able to inject or modify these properties, for example, via some input that's merged into an object, we can potentially pollute the prototype chain. And this can generally lead to unexpected behavior, so we might be able to override default methods or properties or break functionality within the application. It can lead to denial of service, which is pretty common with server-side prototype pollution, and of course we usually want to avoid this, but it's actually quite easy to achieve if an application is vulnerable to prototype pollution. We might also be able to access sensitive data or escalate our privileges, and in some cases where code relies on object properties, we might be able to achieve remote code execution as well. So before we dive into the demo, understanding how JavaScript's objects prototypes work is really important, because even if we find prototype pollution, without fully understanding how it works, it's unlikely that we'll be able to move past creating a payload that just causes denial of service. And of course, if we're working on a production system like we are doing most of the time when we're doing bug bounty, the last thing we want to do is crash the target application. So let's take a quick look at objects, prototypes, the prototype chain, and inheritance. So first up, let's quickly recap basic objects in JavaScript and understand how properties are assigned and accessed. So if we have something like const car equals, the car here is our object, and the brand is just going to be Mini because this is the car that I own, and the model is going to be Countryman, like this. And of course, we can access this car object by just writing car here, and we can access the properties by doing something like car.brand or car.model. And then we can add new properties, of course, so we can do something like car.year, and I think mine is the 2019 model, and once again we can access this property like this. Now you'll notice that when it returns purple here and no single quotes, it's actually returning a number because it's a number 2019. But here, what we can actually do is we can do something like car.year.toString, and you'll see that we get a string back. And this is interesting because when we inspect the car object, we don't actually have a toString method. So where did this method come from? We didn't assign it. It's not part of our object. But what we can actually do is, if I just clear this quickly and we take a closer look at our object, we'll see that we actually have this prototype, and our car object is inheriting from this base object here. And when we inspect that in here, we do indeed see the toString method. So let's explore this a little bit more and how these prototypes work. In JavaScript, all objects have a built-in property called proto, which points to the prototype of an object. And what's interesting about this keyword is that it's actually deprecated. But of course, with the don't break the web mantra and the ongoing backwards compatibility, this is probably going to be around for a very, very long time. So use of proto for general development is obviously discouraged, but it's still supported. And this shows us the object prototype, which is the prototype that objects inherit from, and includes default methods like toString and hasOwnProperty. And this is how our car object ended up being able to access the toString method, even though it doesn't exist explicitly inside of our object. It's actually using something called the prototype chain, which we'll explore now. So the prototype chain is a way in which JavaScript enables inheritance, and if a property is not found on an object, JavaScript goes up the chain to the prototype to check to see whether it exists. And of course, we can have multiple objects in this chain. So for example, if car inherited from something else, which then might inherit from the base object, we're going to go all the way up the chain and check every object along the way. So let's see if car has own property brand. This comes back as true because of course we know the car brand is a mini. And if we do car.hasOwnProperty I don't exist, we get false. So let's add a property to the object.prototype, which is the base object, and see what happens when we do the same thing from there. So if we do something like object.prototype.gearbox, and let's do this as manual because I prefer driving a manual car, and we can see that we get object.gearbox returns manual. So what happens if we do car.gearbox? We also get manual back as well. But of course, if we do car.hasOwnProperty gearbox to see whether this property exists within the car object, we get false. And we can prove this by saying, hey, return the car and all of its properties. We only have brand, model, and year. And of course, if we come down into the prototype, we can see we have the gearbox manual here. So once again, JavaScript is using the prototype chain to check for properties when they don't exist on an object, and if they exist in the object's prototype, then it will return that value. Now, of course, we can also create objects and use them as prototypes, and we might use car as a prototype for other objects. For example, in this case, it creates a chain. So if we create the object mini and assign the prototype car, when we try and access the properties of the mini object, it'll first check there, then it'll check the car object, and then it'll check the base object. So all in all, this creates a chain of objects that act as prototypes. And I think that's enough for now to kind of grasp the general concept. So let's take a look at the lab and see how we can find and exploit prototype pollution. So here we are at our simple lab, and we have this chat application. So we can set a username, join the chat, and send messages. Now, there's a couple of different pieces of functionality we want to explore here, and The main one here is the edit, because when creating new chat messages, if it creates a new object, we're probably not merging in a dangerous way. Whereas when we edit things, in particular objects, so if every chat message was an object, if we're merging the new message into the old object in a dangerous way, then we may be able to achieve prototype pollution. And of course, we can see that the edit works here. And if we refresh the page and come in as Jeremy, there is some persistence in the application as well. So there's obviously either a backend database or it's saving these in memory or something like this. So let's switch over to Web Suite and take a look at what's going on. And as you can see, the front end is just constantly querying /API/messages. And we can see a post request here, which is interesting. So this looks like a new message being sent, and it's just sending the username and the message. And of course, we get this back, which looks like all of the properties of an object. And then we also see this put request here, and we can see just the message. Of course, there is an ID here in the URL. So this is the message that's being updated, and we can once again see the ID of the message that's being sent, and then the username, the message, timestamped, edited, and an interesting property called level. So if we send this to repeater and think about how we want to go about testing this for prototype pollution, and in this case, we're kind of taking the black box approach. So we don't actually know whether this is vulnerable or not. We're just kind of guessing that this property is probably being merged into this message object. Now, in terms of payloads, we don't have time to go through every single payload and different structure today, but here we find a list of payloads. So for example, this first one, we can just use the proto keyword and see whether we have prototype pollution. We can use things like constructor.prototype, we can use dot notation, etc., etc. So there are a bunch of different payloads we can do, and if you want to go deeper into the vulnerability and how it works, then it's definitely worth exploring how different payloads impact the application. But in this case, I'm just going to take this top one. Now, if we come to here and paste this in, the problem we have currently is that even if we get prototype pollution, we won't be able to see this because we don't have a console in the backend where we can query the base object and say, hey, is the base object got a property called test equals true? So instead, we could do something like status. And if we change this to 499, we can hit send, and then we get OK. And then if we break our payload and send some invalid JSON, we actually can see that the response here gives us a 499 status code. And so this looks like we're actually impacting the behavior of the application. And if we set this back to 0 and send this once again, we should get the default status code when it comes back. And you can see that we get 400 now as a bad request. Now, this is kind of a quote-unquote safe way of testing for server-side prototype pollution because it shouldn't really crash the application. But if you do, for example, change this to 599 or something that's out of the usual status range and then come to the application, you can see that we've actually managed to crash the entire application. So until we fix this and change this back to 0, now the application is working once again. And you can also see that this property is also now being reflected here, which is kind of interesting, more of like a mass assignment, but it looks like it's returning all of the properties and all of the ones that are added to the prototype in the response. So quirky behavior from the application. Now, what we want to do is try and impact the application in some way, and this is quite difficult to do when, once again, we don't have access to the source code. If we did, we could review all of the objects in the application and look for properties that impact the configuration or access control. But of course, when we don't have access to source code, we can do things like look for JSON Web Token claims, We can look for APIs that return the properties or information of objects, which in this case we do have a little bit of information coming back to us, and then we can target those. And of course you could fuzz the application as well, but once again, fuzzing the application when you have server-side prototype pollution, it can be quite destructive, so just be very careful if you're doing that. So here, all I'm going to do is I'm going to set the level, and in this case, we'd probably need to fuzz for quite a while to get the right keyword, but I'm just going to go with subscriber and send this. So now we have level on subscriber, and let's come into the application, and we can see that we've actually changed the user level. And the classic way of proving prototype pollution is the isAdmin true, for example, then you get access to new functionality. But this is a good demonstration of, once again, how we can impact the application and the behavior of the application via prototype pollution. And in this case, this probably isn't the end of the world, but it's a very small application with a very small attack surface. And every application obviously uses its own objects and its own properties, and so you're going to have to find interesting ways to actually get some value or some impact out of this bug. And that's what makes prototype pollution super interesting, but also very, very tricky. Now, very quickly, before we finish up, there are a couple of tools that we can use to help us find prototype pollution. One of them is DOM Invader, so we can switch DOM Invader on, and we can switch on prototype pollution. And then if we come into the console and come over to DOM Invader, you can search for sources and sinks, and in some cases automatically generate a proof of concept and trigger things like cross-site scripting. For server-side prototype pollution, there's a great tool in extensions, the App Store. And if we search for prototype pollution, here we can find server-side prototype pollution scanner. Now you can install this on the community edition, but unfortunately it uses the issues tab, which is only accessible with the professional edition of Burp Suite, but is a really good scanner, and I've found prototype pollution a few different times by using this. So definitely worth trying out, as it's going to make your life much simpler, and especially if the attack surface is really large, it's going to make your workflow a little bit smoother. Now, if you want to see this in action quickly, once you've installed the plugin, you'll see the server-side prototype pollution menu tab up here, and you can come in here and change all of the settings. Of course, we're not going to go through all of the settings today, but if you're not sure what a setting is, if you hover over it, it gives you a little bit of extra information. Now, here in the repeater, I'm just going to take my put request and right-click, and we'll go to Extensions, Server-Side Prototype Pollution Scanner, Server-Side Prototype Pollution, and then here I'm actually just going to do the full scan for the demo, and then we'll keep the defaults and just click OK. And after a little while, hopefully the scanner will find the issue and it will be flagged in the Issues tab. And you can see that actually it's found it already. So this was pretty quick. So we got potential server-side prototype pollution via object reflection. And then we've got server-side prototype pollution via the JSON status. So we can see in here the original request, the status updates, so the same as what we did before, setting it to 510. And then we can see the response. And then here we can see a broken request, and then we can see the response 510 not extended, and then once again setting it back to the default 0 here, and then we get 200 OK, and of course sending the broken message. Once again, this switches back to 400. So a very quick way to verify whether we have server-side prototype pollution. And of course, scanners are not always 100% reliable, but against a wide scope or lots of endpoints, it's going to give you some good findings and help you cover a lot of ground very, very quickly. Now, quickly before we wrap up, there are just a few resources that I wanted to highlight to you. And the first up is a paper and script on prototype pollution attacks in Node.js applications. And this is a really interesting one because it also goes through how the author, Oliver, identified prototype pollution in a large number of popular NPM libraries. And of course, you can use the same approach if you want to start looking for prototype pollution in other NPM libraries, for example. And then there's, of course, server-side prototype pollution, the black box detection without the denial of service by Gareth Hayes. And this is just one of a few really, really good resources that Gareth puts out. So, of course, go ahead and have a read of this and some of the other papers that he's done on many, many topics, not just prototype pollution. And then if you wanted the payloads that we looked at earlier, you can see my public AppSec notes at appsecexplained.gitbook.io as well. And of course, if you want a deeper dive into prototype pollution, it's one of the modules included in my advanced web hacking course as well. So feel free to check that out if you want. There are many other great resources as well, of course. And of course, there are also labs and things available on Portswigger's Web Security Academy, so definitely check those out. But hopefully these are a good next step to what we've covered already today. So that's it for this talk. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. And of course, even though we only just started to scratch the surface of prototype pollution, you add it to your list of checks going forward. Thank you for attending, and of course, thank you to Intigriti for inviting me to do this talk.
So, welcome back, everyone. I think this talk was extremely interesting as well, because from myself, prototype pollution is not something that you usually go for, and it can lead you in hiking, in bug bounty, in reporting, in CTF challenges, as we have also on our kit book. It can lead you to amazing places, and it's a very nice topic to explore. We will drop also the links of Alex. Alex, thank you so much for creating this talk for us. And we will drop all the links also in the chat, but also it will be at the video in the description below that will stay on our YouTube channel. Without any further delay, we will go to the next talk of the day, which is more for the beginners. So in order to do a little bit of a wrap up, the next talk is about how to build a career in bug bounty hunting. So if any one of you is interested, not only if you're not a beginner, but if you're interested on our tips and tricks of things that we have seen throughout the years, how to use all the resources and how to hack on the programs and how to select and all things related. You can definitely watch and take some notes from the following talk. Is created by our very own Yannick, part of the Intigriti team. And if anyone wants to check as well, we have two amazing sponsors that are helping. We have many sponsors, but from our platform, Red Bull, runs a vulnerability disclosure program, and Grafana Labs that runs a bug bounty program. What are also the differences and how to enter those programs? All the information will be at the next talk. So I will not keep you away from it anymore, and we will go to Yannick.
Imagine this. You are deep into a capture the flag competition. Adrenaline is surging through your body while you're finally decrypting that very last challenge. They call it the thrill of the hunt, the satisfaction of outsmarting a complex system. But what if I told you that beyond those simulated environments, there exists a whole ecosystem where you can earn and have a real impact, a real-world impact on real-world systems? Welcome to the world of bug bounty hunting, where your hacking skills can make a real impact on the real world. Who am I? Well, I'm Yannick Merks. I call myself an Intigriti veteran. I've been with the organization for a very long time, and I came in originally as a security analyst, but wore over time a lot of different hats. And that gave me the opportunity to meet with customers, but also with many pro hackers around the world. A fun fact, during my uni days, I actually played CTF challenges myself. So I completely understand why you are all here today playing this Intigriti CTF challenge. So the question we will answer today is, how can I go from an aspiring CTF player to an experienced and professional bug bounty hunter? How can I build a career from bug bounty hunting? Well, the first question that we need to ask ourselves, or maybe we should even take a step back, is to define what exactly bug bounty is. If we look at the textbook definition of bug bounty, we can say that it's a process where a monetary reward is given to an ethical hacker for successfully finding and discovering and reporting, of course, a vulnerability to an organization or the developer of that application. What is the benefit of having that process in place? Well, it's simply a win-win. A win for the hacker because he earns something for his hard work, but also for the company because they have new information, a vulnerability that makes their application even more safe. One of the big differences with a CTF with bug bounty compared to a CTF are the rewards. And nowadays, it is possible to build a career from it. It is if you're living in the US, in Asia, or in Europe. It all has different proportions, but you all have shown, and then I'm speaking about the hacker community, they all have shown that they can earn some decent money with it. And of course, they choose what they buy from it. Is it a motorcycle? Is it Tesla? Or is it earning some nice Red Bull? So why should you actually start a bug bounty career? What are the pros? And yeah, what are the biggest drivers for it? Well, first of all, it's flexible and remote work. So you can do it whenever you want, where you want. It allows you to continuously learn and apply your new skills. I mean, it's easy to find a new system out there in the wild and to learn about it, and then to find vulnerabilities. Finding vulnerabilities is not that easy, but it's very easy to stay curious and to search and find new systems and learn about them and then search for security bugs. But also, it has a positive impact on your career. You get in touch with large organizations and you have actually a way to prove your expertise. And it's only beneficial when you can then say, look, I found a vulnerability on their systems. Maybe we can do something more in the future. And at last, of course, one of the big things of bug bounty, there are some very high earning potentials. If you can do this at scale, again, you can build a full-fledged career out of it. We know why and what bug bounty is, but where to find it? Well, I think the obvious answer here today is on the Intigriti platform. You can follow this go.intigriti.com link, or you can go to the website, create an account, and you will see many programs out there. Keep in mind that the programs are sometimes shielded, so the more vetting processes you go through on the platform, you will be able to see more programs over time. So if you have a time, go through all the necessary steps of identity verifications and so forth, and then you will see all the programs eligible for you. What is the progression path on Intigriti, or what is the progression path for a beginning bug bounty hunter? Well, the first logical step is actually browsing through public VDPs. Why? These programs give you a lot of room for error. You have a huge scope to explore. You have a huge playing field, and nowadays, basically all big companies have a VDP in place. So it's a great starting point. But of course, over time, I mean, VDPs, they don't pay you monetary rewards. It might be that they reward you with swag, cool experiences, and so forth. But over time, of course, you want to earn some bucks. And then you go and look at the public bug bounty programs. public bug bounty programs might be already challenging. I must warn you why, because they have been screened by many researchers already. But still, they have often a very large scope, a great team behind it, and some nice bounties. Once you've earned your stripes and you are able to find a few vulnerabilities here and there, is it on a VDP, is it on a public bug bounty program, you will get to the point that you receive an invite to a private bug bounty program. And that's a very good step in the good direction. Why? Well, private bug bounties have typically lower competition because it's only for a selected amount of people. Often the scope is a bit more exclusive, maybe a bit more untested. So chances that you are able to find something on those programs are much higher. And since they are a bit more exclusive, typically the bounties might be a bit better. So all only advantages of joining a private bug bounty program. And if you're already achieving that step, that's great kudos for you. Of course, bug bounty hunting, and it's the same with CTFs, you're searching, and sometimes you simply can't find something. It's great for fun, but if you're building a career, it might not be that great. So at Intigriti, we also give certain researchers the opportunity to join hybrid pen tests. And hybrid pen test, the word says it all. It's a combination of a traditional pen test and bug bounty, where we will pay you already a fixed amount for your time, and you can earn additional bounties for the vulnerabilities that you find during that pen test. So it gives you a way to continuously earn some money and to have some continuity in your earnings. So once you receive that invite for a hybrid pen test, you're again a step closer, or you're already in that state that you are able to build a career in bug bounty. And eventually the summum, and one of my favorite things to experience, are live hacking events. This is the peak of your career, or the peak moment of your career. These experiences are so exclusive, so unique, that I can only recommend to work towards them. And I will hopefully tell you a bit more later on. But for today, if we are talking about finding the right program and going through the process to evolve as a bug bounty hunter, we will assume, or we will mainly focus on web hacking. Generally speaking, if we look at the bug bounty space, a lot is around web hacking. And it's also stated in our Hacker Report 2024, where 90% of our researchers basically say that web hacking is their strongest skill set. So if we're looking for a program, and if we're talking about vulnerabilities, this will be mainly focusing on web hacking. But if you're a cryptographic specialist, or you have other specialties, don't worry. Bug bounty also has a place for you, but the programs will be probably a bit more limited. But that doesn't mean that you are able to find a lot of vulnerabilities, because there is much less competition. So definitely a place for you, but today we will focus on web hacking. So assume that you are you are aspiring to become a web hacking bug bounty hunter. How do you start? Well, step one is to gear up, right? With the right tools, with the right knowledge, you can only achieve that much. So the first thing is to learn. I decided to make a small short list. So one of definitely the resources I recommend are one of these two ebooks, the Real World Bug Bounty Hunting, a Field to Web Hacking, or a Web Hacking 101, all great resources, and basically a go-getter to dive into and to understand what's happening. If you don't have any, or you don't want to spend any budget to it and you don't want to buy the books, you can always visit the Intigriti Academy. It's all free, it's all out there. And of course, also something I recommend is the Portswigger Web Security Academy. Again, free and for everyone available. So once you've learned and read those PDFs, ebooks, and you went through the academy and the academies, it's next to do, right? Theory is only what it is. If you don't apply it, then it's worth basically nothing. And to do, you can join many virtual environments out there. Hack the Box, Try Hack Me, or some open source vulnerable web applications. But you actually took already that step of doing today by joining a CTF competition, because one of the most important skills when you want to become a bug bounty hunter is problem solving and teamwork. I've seen it many times on live hacking events, and also statistically, I want to say that researchers that work together are most likely to find vulnerabilities on high tickets scope, or so basically you only increase your chances when you are working together. And of course, the problem solving mindset, it's something that a quality that you all have by being here. Don't forget your hacker Swiss knife. One of the many questions I often get is like, but what about tools? What should I install? Basically, you need only one tool, and that is Kaido or Burp Suite, Community Edition of Professional. It's up to you. But this is basically essential in order to actually find vulnerabilities on web applications. What do these tools do? Well, they basically allow you to manipulate traffic between you and the application, and basically do all kind of funky things that allow you to find vulnerabilities. So definitely check these tools out before you start. Understand them, learn how to use them. Many YouTube videos out there, many hackfluencers talking about the best tricks on how to use them, but definitely something you need when going for your first program. So assume that we've read it all, we have our Swiss knife in the pocket, and we did already some CTF competitions, so we are ready to go. What's next? Well, selecting your program. And if we go to Intigriti, there are a few things that you can do to build out your bug bounty portfolio. The first thing is to search for low competition and very big scope, right? So there are a few indicators on how to select a program, but the number one rule is what's the scope? What is your playing field? How big is your environment where you can play? Next is, of course, a bit looking for indicators on the competition, like how many different researchers already participated, when was the last bug, what kind of vulnerabilities are accepted, not accepted, how much are they paying, how long has the program been active, when was the last scope update. These are all our small indicators that allow you to assess the sexiness or the attractiveness of the program. And if they're all green to your needs, then I would say go for it. Other things, or some example of a program that is interesting, like high bounties, a big scope compared to lower bounties and a very limited scope. A security researcher dream, of course, is the wildcard, so go search for that one directly. I know a few researchers that only hunt on programs that have the wildcard in place. So if there is no wildcard, they will simply not join. So depends on how big you want to have the playing field, but I would say that this is the security researcher's dream. So side of having a great scope, low competition, a few other things you can do to actually build out your portfolio and to get started as a bug bounty hunter is simply focus on the way you report and document your vulnerabilities. It's a win-win for you and the company when everything is well documented. It allows them to assess it in a fair way, to understand the impact of your found vulnerability, and it allows them to also reward you with a bigger bounty if justified. And at last, and something I want to emphasize, is also network and collaborate. So join the community of Intigriti on Discord. They do some great work there. It's an awesome opportunity also to meet your peers on the platform, to meet up with other bug bounty hunters, to ask questions, and also to keep a pulse on what is playing, where the great programs are, what is good scope, what are interesting vulnerabilities to read on, all of that. So definitely highly recommend you to join Intigriti's community Discord. Step 3, build out your career. So you have your portfolio, you have your programs, you are working on it. Like, what's next? Well, to maximize your earnings as a bug bounty hunter, and I don't want to focus too much on money, but again, we want to build a career out here, so there needs to be some bread on the table. To maximize your earnings, is it in skill points, is it in money? There are 3 things you can do. First of all is prioritize. I've seen many researchers in my inner circle that only focus on, let's say, 3 programs. And they follow those programs throughout the years. Often these programs have also the bounty set, so they are very high paying, that allow them, when they find something on that program, that they get immediately a very high bounty. But create focus with your programs. There is a lot to work on, there is a lot to hunt on. But only focus will get you the necessary results. So over time, it might be a candy store, right? Where you, oh, wow, this is interesting. This is the supermarket behind my corner. Oh, this is my bank. This is my my favorite gaming studio. Oh, this looks interesting because it's my domain. So there's a lot to do, but after a while you are everywhere and nowhere. So try to create focus. Try to find programs where you can find that thrill every time you search and dig through their scope, and hold on to them. Over time, you can evolve to more high-paying programs, and eventually you will have those A-list programs that allow you to build your career on. Next is specialize. So aside of creating focus on the program, you should also create focus on the vulnerabilities you're able to find. Again, there is so much to find in applications. The space is moving at a very high speed, and it's difficult to know everything and to be on top of every type of vulnerability, on execution, on detection, and so forth. So therefore, I recommend to niche down over time. Is it zero-day exploits? Is it cross-site scripting? Is it race conditions? There are many specializations, and you can go very particular, and it might be too niche, but you would be surprised how certain niches are applicable on a variety of different companies. So try to niche down over time. Try to find a vulnerability that sticks with you and that itches every time you browse through code. But definitely niche down over time. My favorite, for example, to find during doing bug bounty are logic flaws. Logic flaws are not necessarily technical, but allow you to think outside the box and also to come up with very, very creative scenarios. So this was definitely something that sparked my interest, and where you can, again, find a lot of information about in the space. At last, if you want to maximize your earnings and, again, build a professional career out of it, build also strong relationships with the program managers. It's incredible to see that a few individuals already in our community have built such a strong relationship with program managers that they were able to meet up in real life, to meet at conferences, to even start working with those companies. So these are all things that happen in this space. and are amazing to see. So over time, prioritize, specialize, and build relationships. So again, if we look at the progression path on Intigriti, we have the public VDP, we did our public bug bounty programs, private bug bounty programs, hybrid pen testing, live hacking event. You have and you achieve the live hacking event summum. And again, I want to emphasize, or I want to give you a preview on what exactly it is. It's definitely a career highlight. And I would definitely recommend you to try to join one. If you ever receive an invite from Intigriti or somewhere else, please try to join them, because they are amazing and they stick with you. And again, an open invitation to also check the after movies on our YouTube channel, where you can have a look and feel behind the scenes on such a live hacking event, but really the summum and the reason why you should start a bug bounty career, even for those exclusive opportunities. I want to thank you for your attention, and this was how to get started and build a career in bug bounty. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. I'm not sure if now you can see me or hear me. Check. I'm here with my dog, Proxy. She's a little bit shy. She's not showing face. That was the talk by Yannick. We wish you all liked and enjoyed it. I see some also friendly faces joining the stream. Thank you so much for joining. First of all, Katie, that soon we have also the talk together, and AG and all of you. Hope all of you also join the CTF tomorrow. Please don't forget it, because I think it's the challenges that we have this year are, as I said, hacking poetry. We have, actually, Jonah with the team of content creators have crafted 50 plus challenges, from Gapon to web to reversing to anything that you may imagine. From beginner to expert, sorry, she has to go. So from beginner to expert, we have tons of challenges for all of you. Cool. The next talk, without any further delay, it's by the one and only Pink Dragonian. Pink Dragonian is solving some of past year's web challenges, while showcasing some tips on how to solve web hacking challenges in CTFs. And yeah, Pink Dragonian joined the chat. That's really exciting. Hey, Robin, how are you? So yes, without any delay, let's go to the next amazing talk.
Everybody, and welcome to this talk on CTFs and in specific web challenges. Now, with this talk, I want to do something interesting. I am going to challenge myself, and I'm going to pick this CTF challenge that I've never ever looked at before, and I'm going to try to solve it live without any editing, without any cutting, just to see what that is like. Now, I have picked an easy CTF challenge, and for good reason. We obviously only have 20 minutes to try and solve this one, and well, if I picked a hard challenge, then we would be here for hours, and for some reason they wouldn't allow me to hijack this live stream for a couple of hours. But we are gonna solve this challenge right here, right now. I haven't looked at it before. I've just read some basic information about it. This is the CTF challenge from last year's Lead Up CTF. And the Lead Up CTF is a really cool event that is also happening this weekend. So the event is pretty much, it's very, very simple. There's just a bunch of cool bug bounty hunters that wrote really cool challenges, and you have to solve the challenges and, you know, find flags and be at the top of the leaderboard. So that's really all there is to it. I participated in the past. It's always great fun. So I imagine that this challenge must be great fun as well. It was written by Jopra Veen, who is a great hacker, and I hear that he has also created a challenge for this weekend, and that's going to be a hard one. This is an easy one. So yeah, we'll have to see how that goes. Now, who am I on your screen? Well, I am Pink Draconian, or Robbe van Roei as my real name goes. You can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube. I make YouTube videos about hacking stuff. In my day-to-day job, I am a penetration tester. At night, I make trainings, and I do some bug bounty. But I didn't start my hacking journey doing bug bounty. I actually started hacking by playing a lot of CTFs, and this is like 7 years ago. I started fully focusing my life on playing CTFs. Every weekend was booked for a CTF, and that taught me a lot of skills that are very applicable now in bug bounty and in my penetration testing job. So the goal is to kind of inspire you to play in the CTF this weekend and to learn some new stuff, because, well, CTFs are a great place to learn and to get better. CTFs are, in my opinion, most of the time even more difficult than actual real world hacking. This year I went on a bit of a CVE spree, and I collected over 30 CVEs in quite big products, to be honest. And the bugs that caused those critical vulnerabilities in libraries with over 100 million monthly downloads, the bugs there were very, very simple. Simple local file inclusions still exist, and that's stuff that you would never see in a CTF. In a CTF, everything is most of the time a bit more tricky. But well, now I'm building myself up. I don't know what this challenge is about. Maybe it's going to be very easy. Maybe it's going to be too difficult for me. We will have to find out. And find out we will do, because I will start right now. So this challenge is called CTFC, and it is clearly, if we look at a CTFD clone, so a CTF platform. And then it says, unleash your inner hacker, join the ultimate cybersecurity challenge. And we can register, so, well, let's register because I want to unleash my ultimate inner hacker. It brings us to a register page where we have to type in our username and our password. So let's type in Pink Draconian as username and then a very secure 4-letter password. And let's register. And that brings us directly to a page with a very cute cat sitting on a pumpkin and seemingly 2 CTF challenges. Yes, 2 CTF challenges. One challenge called Crack It. Let's view that one. My friend sent me this random string. Can you identify what it is? And then one challenge called Meow64. So I assume that we can try to solve these challenges. So let's solve this one. This is probably 32 characters, so probably MD5. But whenever I don't know what a hash is, I always go to the crackstation.net. And crackstation.net is an awesome place. It has a huge rainbow table for a bunch of hashes. And it's just, a rainbow table is pretty much just a database of, this is a hash that results into this password, or rather the other way around, but it's a database of hashes and the passwords. And that way you can just look for, and when the hashes are not salted, you can look for what password might have resulted into that hash. And in this case, this hash was MD5, and CryptoCat was the result, or is the password here. So I suppose that here we just have to type CTFC and then CryptoCat and submit the flag, and it says correct flag. So we've solved that challenge. That's all it does. Doesn't really seem to be changing anything. We can submit this flag multiple times, but that's fine. Okay, interesting. Let's take a look at the Meow64. Meow64, and then this string that's obviously base64. Let's take that string and actually check if that results in anything. So we're just going to base64-d to decode, and that gives us the flag CTFC. Now go for the real flag. So yeah, I guess these flags are just all fun and games to kind of build this concept of this application, which is a CTFD clone, very cool CTFD clone. I wouldn't mind playing like a full CTF on this platform. I seem to have also already broken the website, but that is fine because, oh, we are logged out now. Well, that's really all the functionality that I saw on the website immediately. But we also got the source code for this application, so we don't need to purely base ourselves off of what we see here. But one of the first things I always do when approaching a challenge is kind of just looking at all the things that are available. And then I obviously also have my burp suit open so that in the logs, we can actually look at the HTTP history and look at the stuff that's present there. I see a lot of my requests are marked in green. That means that a specific plugin has found something, and I think this plugin is a Sign Saboteur plugin. There we go. Which is a really cool plugin from some, I think, recent research by Portswigger that can automatically like brute force specific type of tokens. For example, Flask tokens, they can be signed using a specific key, a secret key, and then this can brute force that for various different types of tokens that might be used. Now my brute force seems to not immediately work because I don't have any secrets added. Let's just assume that this doesn't work at this point because I don't want to go debugging before I've looked at the code, because in this challenge you also get the source code, and I think that's the best kind of challenges are challenges where you do get the source code, because the source code can teach you a lot. Starting by looking at this app.py file, and app.py seems to be the main file. We have a Docker file and a supervisor.d file. The supervisor.d file sets up MongoDB, so we know that MongoDB is used. The Docker file loads from a hash. I guess this would be a container that has MongoDB running already, but no, supervisor.d will start it. So I don't know why. That seems a bit weird. It will update, install curl MongoDB. It will install Flask, so that's what we saw in the app.py file, and then we'll set some variables. Okay, so the app.py file is then where the main stuff goes down, and it imports from Flask, so this will be Flask. It uses PyMongo, so again pointing to MongoDB. Also imports MD5, so it might do something with that. Then it will set up the Flask app. It will set a secret key to a specific environment variable, and this is what you could brute force using the Sign Saboteur plugin if it worked, which for some reason it didn't. We have some database settings, so it's connecting to a Mongo client on the local host on the normal Mongo port. What's interesting here is that there's no credentials given, but this port is not exposed in the Docker file. It's only port 80 that's being exposed, so we cannot connect to that directly. Then there's a function create chals, so create challenges, which inserts in the database a challenge, the Crackit challenge, the Meow64 challenge, and a third challenge. In here we can also see the real flag or the flags saved in the database for these other challenges. This third challenge we have not seen yet, because on the website there were only 2 challenges, right? So I have to log in again. There we go. Yes, only 2 challenges. That doesn't do anything. That button doesn't work. So okay, only 2 challenges, but here we clearly see that 3 challenges are in the database, and that's because this one has released set to false. It is worth a lot of points though, so maybe we want to solve it. And then the challenge flag is the OS and environment challenge flag. So I suppose that means that the final flag for this entire challenge can be found there. The description is, well, this challenge is not fully created yet, but we have the flag for it. And it's called Impossible, which is a very cute name referring to cats again. And I'm a big cat lover, so that's all fine by me. Okay, interesting. We then have a middleware. Yes, middleware to check if somebody is logged in. If that's the case, it will run the function, I guess. If not, it will render the dashboard template. I'm by no means good at Flask in some way. I'm just reading this code. Might be fully wrong. Let's find out, I guess. If you browse to the slash endpoint, it is going to take all the challenges from the database, delete the challenge flag to an array or a list in Python, and take challenge 1 and challenge 2, and it will render challenge 1 and challenge 2 in the t_dashboard.html. Okay, so that's what happens if you visit the slash endpoint while logged in. If you visit slash register, it will render register.html. The same for login. If you log out, it will redirect to slash and clear your session. That's all good. And then we have the submit_flag endpoint. And this endpoint is perhaps interesting because it gets an ID, it gets a challenge flag, and then it will find in the database the challenge with the ID, MD5 of your ID, with some ID, and then the challenge flag being the submitted flag. That's interesting because this doesn't really check if it is one of the released challenges, so I guess we can submit flags for unreleased challenges and perhaps get it right. If you get it right, and it just says correct flag, and if you get it wrong, it says wrong flag, so that means that it also is not directly outputting the flag again. So even if you find some way to like bypass this check, or that the flag needs to be the same as the flag in the database, and even then it would just say correct flag and it wouldn't actually show you what the real flag is. So that won't work either. So that's quite interesting. Besides that, in the code we have some static files, some templates, and some models, a sign up user class with a sign up function, username, password using strong hashing. Okay. This all looks like normal login behavior. I don't think the vulnerability is going to be here, because the flag that we really want is, well, we either get an RCE to read the environment file, or we hack the database. And I think since there's only one way into the database, the vulnerability must be here. And looking at what happens, I think I kind of spot the issue here, because we're using MongoDB, and here we have an object that goes directly into a query. And that submitted flag variable that goes directly into a query is tainted, because it comes directly from the request.json, which we as a user can influence. So I call this variable tainted because I as a user can make this variable whatever I want. And if we trace that, it traces directly back to a MongoDB query. So what that means is that I believe if I send a JSON object, then what's going to happen is, so this expects like a flag, right, as a string. But if I send an object like not equals to that, to an empty string, then this will always say correct flag, I assume. And then I think if we use regex, we could like brute force characters, I assume. If that is all, if those assumptions are all correct, then I'm very scared, because that means that I'm gonna have to code a brute force solve script live, which I don't like at all, because then everybody's gonna see how rusty I am at coding, but only one way to find out, I guess. So let's jump into Burp Suite and look at that submit flag call that we see here. I'm gonna remove some clutter from this request. So let's see, that's works, just removing all of that. That still works, and then remove that. There we go. Now we have a nice and clean request to work with. We see the ID is set to 1. I assume we can also set it to 2, and then 3, and then 4. Okay, 1, 2. So for 1, CryptoCat is the right flag. For 2, I then assume that this is going to be the right flag, or maybe 3. So for 1, that's the wrong flag. For 2, that's the correct flag. So then I assume that 3 is going to be this specific challenge. Okay, so now let's test our assumption that we can make this challenge flag an object with a not equals to an empty string, and then we get correct flag. So that immediately worked. So there clearly is a NoSQL injection here. And then I think we can just exfiltrate data using regex. So if I just send this, then it will all be a success. But I sent that, then it fails because the string doesn't start with an A. Does it start with a 1? No, does it start with a C for CTFC? Does it start with an I for the Intigriti flag format? Oh, there we go. Correct flag. So I think the flag format was Intigriti. So then this should also be a correct flag. There we go. This is a wrong flag then. So we already know that this is going to be the eventual flag. Cool. Let's take this and do some scripting. I am going to copy this as a curl command because there's this really awesome website, curlconverter.com. And in curlconverter.com, I can go directly from my curl command to Python code. So then we have some Python code. Then I'm going to create a new file, solve.py, paste that code in there. The cookies, we need that. The headers, we need these headers, I suppose. Although I don't think the host header matters, but that's fine. We'll leave it in. And now we have our JSON data with this specific regex. So, and then I get the response and I can do stuff with that. So let's do some basic coding. So the found flag, I'm going to make a variable found flag to kind of store what has already been found. Then I'm going to do a for loop for character in string.printable, which is all the possible printable characters. I have to import string then. So that's all the printable characters that exist. I'm going to loop over every character, and for every character, I'm going to send a new request, but I'm going to change JSON data challenge underscore flag $regex to be the found flag plus the character. Okay, good. And then we get the response, and then I will print the response dot text, I think, for now. So let's see the first attempt at running this code. Python solve.py. Okay, we see a lot of wrong flags and then one correct flag. So now we can write code that says, well, if correct, so if the string correct is in the response text, then I know that this is the correct character. So then I'm gonna add to the found flag that correct character. I'm gonna print found new character. I'll just print the found flag, and then I do a break, so that it breaks out of this for loop. Let's just see if that's actually already going to find a character. Okay, yes, so the first character is the H. Cool. And now I'm just gonna do a true programming sin and write a while true. And let's see what this does. Okay, so, wow, I'm gonna stop that. It starts off perfectly fine with how, and then it finds, oh god, an asterisk, which of course in regex has some special meaning. So we can fix that by either removing from string.printable or just saying like if the character is in an array that has that question mark has a meaning. What else has a meaning? I think those are the most important ones. So if these two characters are found, then we know, well, that's going to bug out because of course the question mark means 0 or more characters of the previous. This means any characters. I guess the dot would also mess things up. If that happens, then we just continue without going through this code and making the request. Let's see if that gets us any further. Oh, we forgot the plus, I guess. The plus character we also are going to ban. So how is that possible? Okay. How is that possible followed by a pipe and a lot of zeros? I have no idea what a pipe does. Oh, a pipe is an OR, which I guess makes sense. It's gonna check this all, or like E or zeros, which is always gonna work, something like that. Let's try that again. How is that possible? Nothing. Okay. Does that mean that the full flag, this with a closing quote and something broke? No. Okay. Does that mean that one of our characters here is actually part of the flag? Could that be? Because obviously if we add a question mark, that's going to work. If we add that, that's going to work. But I think we can backslash it to make sure it's not regex. Double backslash. Yes, that's the wrong flag now. Question mark. That's the correct flag now. Okay, so that must mean that the question mark is actually part of the flag. So let's just start with the found flag of this so that that question mark is already properly backslashed. Or, well, actually, let's try to be fancy here and let's fix this code by, instead of like messing with these characters, why don't we just backslash these characters? So we say the character is equal to a backslash plus the character. So that way we kind of already backslash them in our payload. That's probably the proper way of coding this. So how is that possible? That worked. Oh, and there we go. We have the flag and the dollar signs are gonna keep on coming. But that must be the full flag. Intigriti, how is that possible? Let's check that out by submitting it here. And indeed, that is the correct flag to this challenge. Whew. That coding went quite alright actually. It's probably very terrible code. Yeah, it is terrible code, but it works, it does its purpose. But that was a pretty fun challenge. I like the challenge. It was not difficult to spot that the code was vulnerable, but it was fun to kind of code up this little script here together. That was a cool challenge. I like NoSQL injections a lot because they are quite rare, but they can be quite impactful. And whenever I know that the application uses MongoDB, I always kind of am extra focused on them because they're hard to detect if you don't know what you're looking for. It's not like with SQL injections where you just supply a quote and you know it works. So that's pretty cool. That's a nice challenge. So yeah, I think that is it. If I look at the timer, that was 25 minutes, so that's kind of perfect, right? I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you're gonna enjoy the rest of the talks, or the talk that you will still see. and that you will join the Lead Up CTF tomorrow and play and enjoy it. If you like this video and want more of it, there's a lot more videos on my YouTube channel, Being Draconian. And yeah, that's it for me. Thank you for watching. Take care.
Muted again. I have to stop doing this. So, can you hear me? I hope yes. Cool. So, without any further change, or can you hear me now? If you can comment in the chat, is everything fixed? Yes, perfect, cool. So, what I was saying amazing words about Pink Draconian. Robbie, thank you so much for creating this talk. And actually, I loved watching you fixing the errors of the things that you were finding. And like the thought process and everything. Also, the spree that you went with CVs is actually pretty amazing. We will leave all links for Pink Draconian in our description and also in the chat here. But without any more, I have two microphones, perfect, cool. Without any further delay, let's give a warm welcome for the amazing, the one and only, the queen of hacking APIs, the Bugbytes original, the person that has actually started creating one of the first bug bounty videos on YouTube, I think. Many people did, and also Nahamsek, but also teaching them from a more professional perspective. Also, a hacker that I look up to, an advocate. She is amazing. I think we all know about who I'm talking about. The sweet and extremely talented Katie. Katie, how are you?
I'm really well. How are you doing?
Good. It's the last talk of the day. We are pretty excited to have you here live. So how have you been? Where are you now? Are you?
I'm at home. I don't have my lovely office because my decorator left my house and was just like, I'm done. So I'm now having to do all the painting myself. So I don't have an office. I'm downstairs in my living room, coming to you live from Manchester. Also, not to I'm going to be significantly disappointing now when people actually listen to the talk and they'll be like, wait a second. This isn't what Sophie promised me.
No.
Like, she's amazing.
What he promised. He did what he promised. I saw your talk, and we will leave also Katie's YouTube channel and X to follow. So where have you been? What are you crafting up now? Like, where are you working? God. Yeah.
So I work as an API security researcher. I'm very happy to say I'm officially security researcher now. I work on APIs, so I find API security vulnerabilities wherever they are. Really fortunate that my job lets me travel a ton. I've been to the US every single month this year. I love traveling, not like that. I'm just waiting for the conference that takes me somewhere like Greece instead of Columbus, Ohio. Columbus was great, but also there was a massive fire and it wasn't much of a holiday destination. But in terms of what I've been cooking up, well, I have launched some upskill courses with just hacking training. They are completely free. They are 30-minute introductions to APIs, RESTful APIs, GraphQL APIs, and it's a really nice introduction to APIs if you don't know anything. And of course, it's all completely free. As is all of the content that I do. And I'm also doing a API security masterclass, which is a 6-hour class that's taught live, completely free online, sponsored by the lovely company I work for, Traceable, which is just free API security training. We do API hacking. We do like how to build API security teams, some of the concerns around SOC, and how to actually do API security from both, an attacking perspective, but also from a defending perspective as well.
This is the definition from community to the community. Amazing to hear. And about the labs that you shared before, are the labs interactive or they are educational? And
they're not interactive. They are just read through some text. Though I will say, spoiler for everyone here who is listening, I will be doing some interactive stuff. I just have to actually write the code. Turns out when you were last a developer like 7 years ago, whenever I actually worked as a developer, and you don't practice writing production code, you get really bad at it. And you actually lose the skill. So I need to jump into it. I've been too busy defending PHP on Twitter and not actually writing it.
Okay, well, we will be waiting for it and check out the labs. While you do your presentation, I will make sure to drop the links and, of course, leave them in the subscription. Katie, this is exciting news. And about Greece, we have a conference. It's not very big, but
if there's a conference, I can expense that. So
yes, it's besides Greece. Just come and we will have tons of fun. And it's in the summer. So believe me, it's amazing.
I love Greece.
I'm trying to convince Intigriti to do maybe a meetup or a kickoff here because
I'll come. I'll fly out. I will take the sacrifice on behalf of the hacking community.
Thank you for doing that. So I will remove myself and I will leave you to everyone because I think everyone is very excited when you joined. Thank you very much, Katie. And without any further change, I'm leaving.
Thank you so much. So today I'm going to be talking about what to do next, and that you're going to hear me say what next quite a lot here, because I think a lot of people, they say, I'm going to do bug bounty hunting, I really want to have a go at it, or I want to do the CTF, and they're like, I'm going to go, they load up the homepage and they go, oh my God, where do I start? So consider this presentation the answer to this. I'm going to go over how I start out when I approach a new target, going from that initial recon into how I think about kind of breaking security controls into actually exploiting them. And I think this is something that a lot of people kind of struggle with a little bit. Like, you choose your target, mate, you go on Intigriti and you're like, okay, I'm going to hack Intel. And you go there, you're reading through the scope and you're like, fantastic, what next? And I think it's the same for CTFs. It's very easy to be very overwhelmed when you actually have a look at these, because especially if you've been doing a lot of like CTFs that are more about learning than challenge, it kind of leads you to the correct answer a lot more than a more difficult CTF does and a more challenging CTF will. And so I really want to kind of use this opportunity just to give you guys some confidence that you know what you're doing, that you know like what you're going to hack and how you're going to hack it. So you picked a target. What now? Well, very simple, read. In fact, I would say maybe like 90% of hacking is literally just reading. Read the program page, read the challenge page, make sure you've got all your requirements. You know, a really common one is adding a header with your Intigriti username in it. Look for any hints, you know, if the CTF challenge is called game hacking, there's kind of something obvious you should be looking for there. Any single time you see something with the like challenge areas or focus areas, you know, you're gonna see bounties increase. Those are the areas where it depends on the company. Maybe some companies are really confident that their security is really like good there. However, when I speak to clients, they usually increase the bounties, not because everything's been found, but they are pretty sure that everything hasn't been Check what's in scope. Everything that, other people have already spoken about, actually read the scope page. But then I think a lot of people skip this step, which is just explore a website and application. Try and understand how an actual user is going to use that. Click around, go into the settings, see what you can do, find those lesser known features. Read Reddit or like forums, see how users interact with it. Create multiple accounts if you want to see what one account can do that another account can't. The first maybe like 3 or 4 hours of hacking a target is literally just an exploration into what it does and how it works. Now, obviously, if it's something that you're familiar with, like my first vulnerability was in Uber. I obviously have used Uber before. So I had got to skip this because I knew how Uber worked. Like I knew, what all the buttons did. But especially if you're going into like a really complex, I'm use Intel as an example because I think they really do have a very overwhelming. They've got things like hardware security in there. You need to really understand that application, that website, and understand how exactly it's supposed to work. And then you go back to reading it. Once you understand the application, this text here that's got like a bunch of like what makes something eligible, what are the edge case, like all of that makes more sense after you understand the application. And a lot of people, I think, get in this situation where they're like, I'm going to hack Intel. So they scroll down to the scope, they pick the first website they see, they paste it in, they're like, right, it's hacking time. 90% of those first few hours has got to be you thinking and playing around with the target like you would normally. It's about reading it, having a go, like reading through it, doing the research, etc. It's a very continuous process. And, for CTFs like the Intigriti Level Up CTF, they're always going to differ in difficulty, but something that makes them really different from a bug bounty perspective is that is always a solution. Usually there are multiple solutions the creators didn't even think about. People solve it the wrong way all the time. Challenge rating, saying something's like a hard challenge, doesn't always mean how difficult it would be for you to solve it. It's a general difficulty. It's not a rule. You don't have to be, like expert hacker to do an expert CTF challenge. Often you'll put yourself in a position where you'll just be starting a CTF and you will already disqualify yourself because you think your skills aren't there. But there are so many CTFs where the rating might be wrong, or actually one of those unintentional solutions might be a lot easier, or actually you just know the technology, you just know it really well. So let's talk Recon. This is always where people start out and they always ask me, Katie, what's your Recon strategy? And I'm going to be honest, I don't have a Recon strategy. I'm not very good at Recon. I don't really care about Recon. However, for a lot of applications, especially, those like wildcard domain applications from before, those are going to need some Recon just to find something. I really like Jason Haddox's Bug Bounty Methodology 4.0 Recon Edition because I think you cannot get more in depth than this. This goes over literally everything. How much of that is actually required to find bugs? Probably one task, but you cannot get a better source for Recon knowledge than Jason. He has a system and he is on the ball. Now, the first thing people start out with is subdomains, because fundamentally when you look for subdomains, you're trying to find things to hack. Obviously in CTFs, this is not that important because you usually don't have a subdomain. You usually have a single application or endpoint that you're just given. However, if you are doing a bug bounty kind of hunting situation, this is a bit more important. The idea of finding subdomains is I think a lot of people get caught up in trying to find everything, when actually all you're trying to do is narrow down something mind-blowingly huge into something you can think about in your brain. I always use the example of Salesforce because Salesforce is absolutely insane. It connects to so much. There are so many different data types. There are so many different things built on top of Salesforce. Oh my God, If you go in there being like, I'm going to hack Salesforce, you're going to be like completely lost because you can't keep everything it does inside your head at once. So by narrowing it down, you're making the scope more manageable. You're making it so you can think about it a bit more easily. Again, it's not about finding everything. It's about narrowing down your options and giving you options as well. Giving you, am I going to hack this or hack that? Now, some of the best hackers will also build alerting systems on their favorite targets. So if you think, how do hackers find everything before I do? Often it's because they have their preferred programs and they will set up alerts. So it's like, oh, when a new subdomain is on, I don't know, this target that I hack a lot, alert me. Now, this gives them an advantage because often they're using like paid sources, but you can do a lot of this for free. Some of my favorite tools, Amass and Subfinder. I really like Amass because it has a lot of different sources and you can set up like API keys. Now, if you want to test your Recon, I really recommend this project by POM. It's called Recon Royale. I should actually put this in the chat so people can find it. But it's a little competition that every single day, every single day, right? I think it's every day. Yeah, every day they have a new domain and you try and submit as many subdomains as you can to that domain. So the idea being that you can very easily, oh man, I can't post it in the chat. Can somebody, I'm going to put it in the private chat. Can someone just post that in the chat? So they'll have like a target, like when I did this the other day, it was bbc.com. You log in with your Twitter account, you upload a text file just full of the domains or the subdomains of bbc.com, and then you get points, and then you can get some kudos for your points. You know, there's a little leaderboard, there's achievements. It is such a fun way of like testing your recon skills. I really recommend it. Now, once you actually find a domain, or you already have like a product you want to hack, you're then going to think about what technology something use. Really, this is far more popular for CTFs, where often the challenge requires you to look up something about the technologies in use, but it's also useful for real targets. If you go to intel.com on Built With, it uses a bunch of things, Dynatrace, Adobe Marketing Cloud, it uses an Akamai product, it uses Salesforce. It gives you an idea that this is not just one little like piece of technology. This is a whole bunch of different skills you might need. And this is where I think the community aspect is so important. Again, useful for people who are doing like CTFs, but also if you are getting involved in like the Intigriti Discord server, you'll be able to meet hackers that have different skill sets to you. And that's how you build collaboration. Shocking enough, you don't build collaborators by just going and asking for anyone to collab. You need to offer something in return. And quite often, knowing these technologies are a great thing for you to offer in return. Now, Recon isn't just about getting subdomains. It's about research. It's about you learning about technology, taking the time to get to know that technology, reading about some of the security concerns. And yeah, you can use AI to summarize some of this, but you still need to actually understand what's in front of you. So often I see people whose version of hacking is to take like an XSS payload and paste it in everywhere. But one, you're just wasting your time. And two, even if you find something that easily, somebody else has probably found it before you. So digging into the research about how something works, how that technology works, some of the security concerns around that technology, that is huge for actually, you know, being a bit more in depth and actually understanding what's in front of you. So you've done some recon. Now it's time to start narrowing down the options. What bugs do you look for? Well, don't just stick to one thing. Like, don't just take a cross-site scripting payload and paste it in everywhere, because it will not work. One, because you won't understand when it doesn't work, why it doesn't work, like this example on Stack Overflow here. You don't like, this is just never going to be vulnerable to cross-site scripting because it's not rendering the script tag as JavaScript. It's rendering it as like special characters or the HTML characters. This is not going to work. So it doesn't matter how many times you copy and paste it, it's still not going to work. And you'll end up being like this person here where they're like, why didn't it work? You need to understand what you're doing. You need to avoid copying and pasting payloads and actually looking at what's in front of you. You need to think, okay, this is the application. This is how I think it's built. You don't actually have to know for sure. It doesn't matter that much. But here is my logical way of how I'm going to approach this application. If you are just copying and pasting payloads, as soon as that script alert 1 doesn't work, you are going to feel very lost, very confused, and not really sure what to do next. If you can break it down into, okay, so it's got this kind of front end, maybe it's got a JavaScript front end. It's got a JavaScript front end, it's got an API backend. Okay, what are some of the vulnerabilities we see when you have that kind of setup? Well, I might be able to send a cross-site scripting payload via the API, which is then rendered on the JavaScript front end. And if that doesn't work, you go, okay, it's probably not vulnerable, rather than spending a lot of time sitting there copying and pasting a single payload into every single form field. I think the best way to approach learning to hack is to learn more about the signs of bugs. A lot of people will focus on payloads, cross-site scripting, SQL injection. Instead, I think a better option is to learn little litmus tests. If you see the start of a tag rendered as the @ symbol LT for less than, it is not going to be vulnerable to XSS if you need that character in there. It doesn't matter where you paste it, it's probably not going to be vulnerable. If you can do those little litmus tests, you will save time, and ultimately you'll build up your own methodology based on these little checks. And if you do find something like cross-site scripting, you can always dive deep and go, okay, that isn't rendering. What other options do I have? I'm going to go to a, cross-site scripting cheat sheet and figure it out. It's about taking that, instead of focusing on copy and pasting, it's thinking a lot more deeply about what's in front of you. And this is my general suggestion when you're learning. Read broad, dive deep. So whether or not that's disclosed reports, whether or not that's write-ups and CVEs, CTFs, like doing them, or CTF solutions, newsletters, videos, podcasts, all of this allows you to have a very broad view of what bugs you can find, and you can always dive deep when you find the signs of it. Some channels that I really like, Bug Bounty Reports Explained from earlier, his stuff is so based in the disclosed reports and actual findings that his stuff is just really, really good. And he's got some great interviews with hackers as well. The Critical Thinking Bug Bounty podcast, again, it's very much that kind of read broad approach, hearing about a bunch of different findings. And again, you can always dive deep. That's what I'm trying to say is you can get your sources from all these different pieces of information, and then when you need it, you can find it. When you get to that very specific setup, or you think, hey, this is probably vulnerable to SSRF, then you can read up and get the exact payloads. So use an example here. Maybe you're reading a disclosed report and you see reference to operation name, variables, mutation, type name in this kind of JSON format. If you know about API hacking, you might instantly go, that's GraphQL. And then you can look at it and see, you don't need to know how queries are written or what type name means, because you can always look that up. You can always use AI to generate a GraphQL query for you, but you can say, hey, if I see this sign of a GraphQL sign up form, I should check whether or not I actually need to confirm that email. You can take the kind of functional aspect of how that vulnerability occurred without caring what the payload was. Now, I really like building up a knowledge base. So when you get all this different information, all these different sources, creating your own kind of bug bounty database, a few years ago, 2019, I was chatting with another hacker on a bus going to a live event, and he used to have, like, his background was data science and data, and which is kind of interesting because that's my background as well. So I was having a chat with him, and he was saying, yeah, I have a knowledge base of all my bug bounty findings that I always reference when I find new bugs. And so for him, that having access to that knowledge base essentially allowed him to replicate findings on different hosts across things. And to use an example, I did a GraphQL CTF. It was a very beginner-friendly GraphQL CTF before that live event, like maybe a week before, because it just come out. And I was just having a play around with it. I was just kind of learning how to write GraphQL queries. And what happened was, as I was kind of absorbing this information from the CTF, I found a GraphQL endpoint. I was able to exploit it because I'd done that CTF and because I had that knowledge and my notes. And it doesn't matter if you're going to subscribe to something like a Second Brain or Obsidian, the tool doesn't matter. Just make sure you're building up your knowledge outside of your head. So that way, when you find a technology you're not familiar with, you can look and see, hey, have I seen this before? Have I read this in a disclosed report? Have I seen this in a blog that I read? Have I, do I have a payload already? And, you know, a lot of people talk about like, oh, can you give me your methodology? And I'll be honest, I'm guilty of this as well. I have a video that's like, what to do when all the bugs have been found, my methodology. But you really need to develop your own methodology. Steal from others, absolutely. Steal their ideas, but make it your own. Because if you really understand what they're doing, you're going to actually understand how to approach a target, and you'll feel less overwhelmed. You won't have that experience of, say, joining the CTF and going, oh my God, I don't know where to start, because you can borrow theirs. Think about what Pink Draconian was just talking about, right? He was showing his approach. Steal his ideas, but make it your own. Okay. But Katie, this is like thinking stuff. I just want to hack. I hear you. Right, you want to hack? First step, make multiple accounts. Answer these questions. How are emails verified? How do you reset your account password? What can an account do? What kind of cross-account interactions are there? 2, security controls. What are the password requirements? Can you turn on 2FA? Can you talk about what 2FA is available? What other privacy settings can you enable and disable? What are you able to do? 3, explore the application. What's the main use case? What are most users doing? Can you search? What can you see about other users? What payments or subscriptions does that app offer? I forgot what number I'm on. 5, technology. How does it know? How does it actually know what the application is doing? Is it using an API? How does it use interactive elements? Does it use a development framework? How much is locally happening on your device? What are the core settings? 6, reflected and stored. Where is user input reflected by the application, and where is it retrieved by the application? Now, if you start to understand these, the kind of main benefit here is that this is really what you're attacking, right? This is really, you know, if you can't turn on 2FA, well, you don't need to bypass 2FA, do you? You could do a brute forcing attack. If 2FA is text message based, well, you can use like a spoofed phone number or whatever the 2FA requirements are. If you can reset your password without, and the like key is just your email address, again, you can start to use these answers to think about your hacking strategy without necessarily being in a position where you're just copying like a payload you saw once. So, okay, how do you actually find juicy stuff? You do all of that. You kind of understand how the application works. You understand some of the security controls. How do you actually exploit it? So, access control is where I always start, because with large applications, they'll have easy to miss access control issues. And I really like Archangel D-Day's way of explaining this. He has this really great list on Twitter that I retweeted like yesterday, and it's like top 10. It's like 100 tips for being a hacker in 100 days or something. And he has, I'm just trying to put it in the chat as well. I'm just trying to find it on, I should have probably prepared this. Sorry, guys. There we go. Right. Could somebody from Intigriti please put this in the chat? Thank you. And it's like 100 very short bug bounty rules. And one of the things he says is look for no's. What does it say from the application that you shouldn't be able to do? What does the application say? Hey, you can't do this. This is not possible. This would break a security control. You know, a guest user can only view, they cannot comment. Well, if you can comment, that is a security vulnerability because there is a security control in place. Now, to do access control testing, you're going to need multiple accounts. The Burp add-on PwnFox is a godsend for this. They have a Chrome, there's like a Chrome version as well, but it essentially just colors your Burp tabs. So when you on Firefox, or if you use Chrome, it will have like a red bit on the tab, and it will also make the request in Burp red, so you can see what accounts are doing what in your traffic. It just makes it a lot easier when you're juggling multiple accounts. But I can guarantee, especially for APIs, you will always find access control issues on APIs. 100%. They are everywhere, just because large apps will always have easy to miss access control issues because the scope of an application is just too big. Like, it's just thousands of endpoints. The Chrome extension is called AutoChrome. I'll also put that in the chat for someone from Intigriti to put in the main chat. Okay. Business logic. So business logic is one of those great bugs to look for when you when you're in a competition. Because when it comes to something like bug bounty hunting, business logic is so specific to the application and how it works. And it's less about copying and paste and more about thinking through the implications of design decisions. Think about e-commerce. You know, can you add a coupon that doesn't exist? Can you add an expired coupon? Can you add -1 of an item? You know, thinking those simple things that could make something free, very easy kind of output to have, very easy security argument to make. You know, you are going to lose money because people will get stuff for free. Very, very common for simple applications as well, especially for applications that maybe don't have a logon system. Well, what does the, you know, kind of, if you don't have a logon system, what are the implications of that long term? A lot of people are scared of some technology. API, GraphQL, mobile apps are the ones that I see. Certainly anything crypto related, whether that's cryptography or cryptocurrency. Certainly game hacking as well is one of those. And learning those skills, especially as you're doing CTFs, they're a great way to learn them and then apply them later on in a bug bounty context. You know, if you know a specialist skill, there's going to be less competition here. It's going to be more attractive long term. And like I said, it was only maybe like 2 or 3 weeks after I'd done like a GraphQL CTF that I found my first GraphQL vulnerability, because I could recognize it and I wasn't scared of GraphQL because I'm like, I know how to write queries. I've done it already. That makes it a lot easier for you to kind of engage and avoid getting scared. Now, I've spent a lot of this talk like saying don't use payloads, don't use payloads. And I should say that I haven't got anything against payloads, and I don't think no one should use payloads. It's about using payloads thoughtfully. It's not just stick it in, just Control-C, Control-V everywhere. It's about going, that's a JWT. I'm going to go and look at JWT vulnerabilities. Oh, look, here are some examples of JWT payloads. I'm going to try those rather than going straight into, okay, I'm just going to try like JWT non-algorithm everywhere. I don't care what it does. I'm just going to do it everywhere. It's about being thoughtful with where you're looking and actually using those payloads effectively. When to research all the time. I cannot stress how important Google is when you are hacking. I don't know everything about every piece of technology. Like, I may have a developer background. I certainly don't know a lot about developer tools nowadays. I know nothing about DevOps nowadays. But I don't need to, because I have Google. I can just Google it. When I come across, I don't know, like CI/CD pipeline stuff, I can just look it up. And I think that's really, really important. Don't count yourself out. Same as the CTFs, right? Don't go, I know nothing about crypto, therefore I'm not even going to try. You have the ability to Google things or use AI to summarize Google. Like, just use it. So thank you very much, everybody, for listening. I am here live, so I can take Q&A. Here's all the places you can find me, including every single Twitter clone and Twitter alternative. So I'm on Mastodon, Blue Sky, LinkedIn, but also Twitter. And you can also watch my videos on YouTube if you liked my insane rants. But thank you very much, everybody. You're on mute, so
what is happening today with me? So thank you so much, Katie. Actually, I don't know what to comment first. We can leave some time if anyone wants to drop anything in the chat till we give some time to people. I will do some questions till we have any questions in the chat. One would be question, and also something that I completely remember, one of my also first engagements, that what we were taught and what it was said all the time by my manager was, be careful. It's not like, okay, you take the exploit and you hit it and you don't know what is the scope. Where are you hitting that exploit? Maybe because I awfully start hammering a chatbot in an insurance company, awful. And they were calling, okay, you need to stop. And that is also something that we see many times in reports. So question here for you is, how important is for researchers to respect the rules of engagement?
It's really important. And I think in a bug bounty context, it's even more important. I used to work at a bug bounty platform. I used to advocate for hackers. One of the most difficult things that was my job was to say, I'm sorry, we do not approve of this behavior, but could you pay them anyway? And it's really hard, because when a client sees that, they interpret it as unprofessional. You already put them in a situation where they just do not want to interact with you. And when it comes to, like, especially testing, chatbots are a great example, because you do not know when the human takes over from the chatbot, and the person on that end does not know you're doing security testing. They might interact with it. You're wasting their time. It can just put you in a really negative position with a client at the start. Saying that, do people go out of scope and find stuff? Yeah, of course they do. There's a reason why it's out of scope. However, if you actually want to get paid for your findings and paid on time, and don't want to sit there and have to argue all the time about what you found and how the easiest thing to do is to just stay in scope, because the client will be so much happier when it comes to paying you, and they will be willing to forgive some potentially, unprofessional behavior if it's accidental as well. Stuff does happen. You can. I've tested where I forgot to put security headers in, but most clients, if you say, "Hey, I'm sorry, that my bad," most people are fine with it. Most people are very reasonable people and do not mind.
Yeah, that's a very nice approach to the out of scope findings. Like, by the way, it's also this, not the other way around. Hey, take this. Of course, it's responsible, but we have to respect, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly, there are situations, and something that I've had recently has been submitting a report, wanting to disclose it and talking about it, and the client saying no. And it's really frustrating, because I want to be able to tell people my findings and talk about how I did it and share it. and so other people can learn from that. However, if a client turns around and says no, there's not really arguments there, right? Like, it's not really something I can do. I could go on Twitter and just paste the payload, yeah, but I want to make sure that they're on my side. So having a reasonable conversation is like, okay, could I share it without naming names? Could I share it completely anonymously? Could I share the technique but not the client? That's a lot easier to keep the client kind of on board and actually engaging with you as a hacker.
Agreed. Let's pick one of the questions here in the chat. One of them is strategy about, what is your strategy about unauthorized API testing? It's just like trying everything without a cookie?
Yeah, so the way I do it is I will take a request. I'll use 3 different accounts usually. One kind of that's not logged in. So I'm not removing the entire cookie. I'm just removing, hopefully, just the logged in part. So the account is logged out. The second one, I'll have one account, and the third one, I'll have another account. They're 2 separate accounts. And what I will do is I will copy I'll use the first account, that's my victim account. And then I have my attacker account and then my attacker not logged in account. So I will replace the cookie on the victim's request with the ones from those other 2 accounts. Now, what's really important here to mention, because everybody gets this, I am not saying your attacker needs the victim's cookie. The idea is the victim doesn't need the cookie. They don't need to be logged in. They can be logged in as another user. And I have to say that because people will often get that wrong, and they'll come to me and be like, I have my bug was made NA or inapplicable because they said I needed the cookie. It's like, that's not an IDOR. It's not an authorization problem. That's how it's supposed to work. You're logged into an account. So what I do is I have my victim account. I do a request on the victim account, remove the cookie, replace it with the one from a completely unlogged in account and a completely attacker logged in account. And then I will test both of those and everything. And a lot of the strategy around authorization testing in API specifically is literally just time. It's time and just hitting every single request. It's very tedious, but in a good way, because as a bug bounty hunter, you kind of want something to be tedious because that means no other hackers are doing it but you. So it's tedious, but in a good way.
Yeah, and to add to that and to the question, when it comes to authorization, it's also about not only the 2 hacker accounts, but also 2 accounts with different privileges.
Yes, definitely.
Which
permission matrices as well. When you start to do enterprise SaaS applications, add tenants into it as well. Oh my God, fantastic place to find vulnerabilities. My God, is it time consuming, but it's great for finding them. I will say it's mainly about volume. For a lot of this kind of testing, it's about testing enough API endpoints. It's about testing enough different types of accounts or different permission levels until eventually you'll find one that's not implemented correctly. And I can pretty much guarantee that on any API, there is one endpoint that is not implemented correctly in this way.
So now that you said enterprise accounts, we have a question by Jonah, aka CryptoCat. When we are creating multiple accounts and we have to do bug bounty, and it's about bug bounty programs of big companies like enterprises, it's quite difficult to create multiple because you need phone numbers and different emails and things like that to authenticate and verify. What are your tips when creating multiple accounts that require all these pass?
So the first thing is I actually do have multiple phones and multiple phone numbers. You can SIM cards are actually very cheap, and often because you don't need credit. I use pay-as-you-go SIMs. Because you don't need credit to receive messages, you only need it to send. You can pay for £5, 5 UK pounds. Argos, if you're in the UK, you go to Argos. 3 and Vodafone sell SIM cards that have £5 on them. I think they cost 10 quid because there's a fee for activating the phone number. However, if you have a newer phone that can use eSIMs, getting an eSIM from these people, Areolo,
Yes, yes.
Remote.
I wanted to say the same. I went also to States this year, and actually, our CEO's PA suggested this for me, and it's amazing. You can just pick the country, and you can only have mobile data or even nothing. You just have a SIM card, and you can receive everything. Aero, top.
Yeah,
I will put it.
it's really good. Somebody said people use Google Voice. Google Voice is great. It's not available outside the US. So that's why I don't use Google Voice. But yeah, there's another company as well. I'm trying to remember what it's called. Oh man, I used it recently to just do like 2FA codes, but I cannot remember what the company was called. Let me see if I can very quickly find it.
What
I just
was
remember
it
they had an
for?
orange logo. It was like a virtual. You know what? I might be able to find it if I like say VOP. I cannot remember what it was called. These do not look familiar. But I did use one recently, and it was good. It had an orange logo. You could top that up with a very small amount of money, and you can also have multiple phone numbers in your account as well. I'm trying to go through my downloads to try and find it, but I'm not finding it.
We have another question for you. Any tips on detecting and fingerprinting? What handles the apicals when it's not GraphQL deck?
You don't necessarily need to. So you can use built with. Built with is really good. I've also had some luck with using like API, like fingerprinting stuff. What company does it? If you look up API fingerprinting, there's an application that can do API fingerprinting as well. But you don't really need to. So the most important thing about when you find an API is to go, is it SOAP? And therefore, is it using XML? Is it RESTful? Which is probably going to be 90% of the time it's going to be RESTful. And is it GraphQL? The reason why it's important to know whether or not it's SOAP or GraphQL as opposed to RESTful is just because the way you interact with it is different. What exact backend is running the RESTful API? You know, if it's written in PHP or Python, it kind of doesn't really matter in a lot of ways. Now, it sometimes does, but in a lot of ways, it doesn't matter, especially when we're thinking about testing authentication, authorization, and mass assignment type vulnerabilities. It doesn't really matter what's powering it. Saying that, I was able to fingerprint a GraphQL server from having like
GraphQL map.
I sent an error. I got it to error, and I was able to use that to fingerprint not just the fact it was like a GraphQL, but it was GraphQL running on Java, running on this one particular GraphQL server, and then on top of that, what version number it was, just based on a single error message.
Wow.
That was fun. That was really, really fun. That was really, really fun.
Okay, I don't think we have any other questions, and it's already almost 4 hours in the stream. Katie, thank you so much for coming to the closing of the stream and for presenting today. Any closing remarks for everyone?
I will leave everybody with one thing. You will never feel like you know enough. You will never come to enough of these events that you will feel like, now I'm ready to hack. The fact you have been here today, you sat through all these talks by these great hackers, you are ready to hack. Have a go at the CTF, have a go on a real target. I promise you, there is not a critical mass of knowledge you need. You do not need to watch 10 hours of video and 4 hours of conference talks before you're ready, right? You are all ready right now. So please have a go, and I really hope you have a great time with the CTF tomorrow. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you also, Katie, for joining us. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
And that was Katie, and that's the end of our stream today. I'm Soti, aka Roadrunner from Intigriti. It was amazing to have all of you. Any questions you might have, please leave them in the YouTube video that will be linked in our YouTube channel. And make sure to join the CTF tomorrow. We have tons, as we said, in prizes, including cash, exclusive swag by our amazing sponsors, and Let's Defend, Hack the Box, Grafana, and Red Bull. So make sure to join. And we have more prizes also for top write-ups and best videos for after the CTF. And as Katie said, that's also the purpose of the CTF. It will be from beginner to expert. So make sure to join just to practice your skills. That's all needed. And that's all from me. Have a great rest of the day or night, wherever you are. And let's tune all of us in tomorrow at 12 p.m. UTC time for the CTF that has 50+ challenges from GamePon, web, crypto, forensics, anything. So that was goodbye from me. And yeah, thank you all.